Hello, good evening and welcome ladies and gentlemen to the 16th season of the Alpha Touring Challenge, as brought to you on the premier sim racing platform available only on PC known as iRacing and powered by both Syncmesh and glass and steel photography and design. That's right ladies and gentlemen, we are back for the 16th rendition of the absolutely incredible Alpha Touring Challenge, which continues to ask the question year in year out, who is the master or mistress of the touring car racing machine? It has been 5 years since the inception of the first ever competitive race in the Alpha Touring Challenge, and what better way to celebrate the 5-year anniversary of the Premier Touring Car Series than to hold a 16th season with plenty of new things in store, but also the most important and classic formula still at its beating heart, and that is absolutely incredible and lovable touring car racing. We welcome you all to this broadcast. It's a post-round broadcast recorded for your viewing pleasure, but being premiered to you on YouTube today at Paul Walsh Productions, and therefore treat this broadcast as if it were live. We'd encourage you to, because here in the Conto booth, we do not know what happens in the practice session that's currently ongoing, nor in the upcoming qualifying session, nor the race, and that's going through the formula over the entirety of the season. We can't quite bring it to you exactly live as the racing transpires. Of course, the racing for this opening round 1 of 10, occurring on Monday, the 5th of January 2025, well, in fact 2026 there, let me get my years right, I'm still in the past, but what I can definitely tell you is that we are bringing it as close as possible to as if it were live on this Tuesday, the 6th of January 2026. But speaking of a blast from the past, that's right, my name is Paul Walsh. I'll be your commentator and broadcaster for this season of the Alpha Touring Challenge. I'm back after a long hiatus, and for those I haven't been introduced to, you may remember me from seasons 5 and 6 of the championship all those many years ago. Goodness me, it has been 2.5 years since I last covered this championship, and I'll tell you one thing, ladies and gentlemen, it still stays absolutely fresh in my memory, and some of those memories I'll be telling you about very shortly, because of course this is a very special season opener for the Alpha Touring Challenge, and indeed I'll recall some of the moments from Road Atlanta, which is our host circuit today. The rollercoaster ride of road racing that is Road Atlanta, the Michelin Raceway sponsored circuit, is one that is not easy to conquer, and it's arguably one of the best ways to open up a championship campaign. With the best part of 2.445 miles in length and also 12 corners at its core, it's absolutely ram-packed with undulations and elevation changes. Indeed, arguably around the world, it's got the most elevation changes per corner compared to any other circuit with its asphalt, and therefore this is one of those circuits where flat-out, full-on commitment is required from our drivers lap after lap if they want to come away not just with pole position but also with victory. Now, as we come into this season opener, what's our schedule for tonight? Well, as we can see, our times are shown on screen. Times in Eastern Standard Time, that's EST or Universal Coordinate Time -5, UTC -5, and approximately what will be about 5 minutes time, in fact about 10 minutes time, we are going to be making our way into our qualifying session. That will be 10 minutes in duration. All drivers out there on an isolated instance of their circuit, and they're going to be able to do everything they can in order to get themselves onto pole position, either it's being overall or across our 3 classes. Wait, did I just say 3 classes? Shouldn't have said 2, should I? No, because that's right. We have got 3 classes on the grid for this season. A new class has arrived. More on that very shortly, and we'll introduce it to you, ladies and gentlemen. But after our qualifying session, we have our first race of the season. This is an endurance race round. 60 minutes is the length of the race at Road Atlanta, and that is due to get underway at 9:25 this evening. We're looking forward to it, no doubt about it, and let's bring you up to speed then with the story for this season and get you to what is the most important thing, and that is cars out of the circuit. So as we can see, here is our calendar for season 16. 10 rounds running all the way from the 5th of January, which is this round today, all the way up to round 10 of 10 on the 9th of March, where we bring the curtain down and crown our 16th season champions. We begin the journey at the Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta for a 60-minute endurance race. Then we make our way over to the neighbouring Charlotte Motor Speedway as we roll our way to North Carolina from the state of Georgia, and there will be our first sprint race round, 2 25-minute races. Then in round number 3 on January the 19th, it's going to be the Okayama International Circuit in the Okayama Prefecture of Japan, and we thought it only fitting, if you're looking at the flags and thinking there's some very odd flags on this calendar because that's not the Japanese flag, you would be correct because that is the official flag of the Prefecture of Okayama, and we've done our best to respect the fact if we've got the state flags of the US of A, we're also going to have the state, prefecture or county flags of every other country we're visiting, although there's one exception, you may have already spotted it, and we'll tell you why very shortly if you're a keen eye of geography. But in terms of our geography, it will be at Okayama we have our second endurance race round, 45 minutes in duration, after which on the 26th of January we make our way back to the US of A. Across the Pacific we go, and it's going to be the Texas two-step in the Lone Star State of the Circuit of the Americas, because of course it is Texas. That'll be a 2 by 25 minute race configuration there. And then we have our 5-year anniversary round 5 of 10 on the 2nd of February, out by a day technically because it was the 1st of February all the way back 5 years ago where we opened up proceedings. But at Watkins Glen International, we will be commemorating our 5 years at Alpha Touring Challenge with a special round, and it will be a 45-minute endurance race round. However, there's just one slight caveat. There won't be a normal qualifying session. There will be a pre-qualifying race. There will be the race to qualify on pole, not the qualifying laps, and more about that when we get closer to the time. After which, and after the special occasion, we then make our way straight into the second half of the season. There's no rest here in the Alpha Touring Challenge, is there? And it will be on the 9th of February, we make our way to Canada for the Ontario region Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. There'll be sprint races aplenty there, and then we make our way to Mexico, and Mexico City in particular, for the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez, and that will be our 45-minute endurance race for round number 7. Now, why the Mexican flag? Why no state flag? Well, keep in mind, Mexico City is where the Hermanos Rodriguez circuit lies, and it is its own state in Mexico, if you were curious, and that's why it bears the Mexican flag. So it's the capital city and therefore the capital flag of the country. And then in round number 8, on the 23rd of February, we head to the United Kingdom, only briefly, but it will be for the Cheshire County circuit of Alton Park, and it will be a trip in the northwestern countryside of England, while drivers have to deal with 2 very tight 25-minute sprint races, and it's endurance races all the way to the end. On March the 2nd at Sebring International Raceway, we'll see our drivers take on the wonderful circuit in Florida. Albeit, will they be taken off on the old run strips, or will they find themselves crash landing? Well, hopefully it's the former, not the latter. And after that 60-minute race, we've got another 60-minute race to wrap things up. We'll bring the curtain down in the US state of Virginia at the Countryside Classic. It is the Virginia International Raceway on the 9th of March. And that's where we'll be crowning our season 16 champions across our drivers and teams championships, and also giving out all the honours and awards. Goodness me, there are plenty. But we begin today then at the Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta. Let's talk a little bit about it, and let's open up our cheat sheet. That's right, here is the Alpha Touring Challenge cheat sheet for our opening round. Road Atlanta, a circuit that's 2.54 miles in length, 12 corners in totality, and an absolutely iconic circuit, whether you are a motorsport enjoyer domestically in the US of A, or alternatively on an international level around the world. You can't have motorsport without Road Atlanta. Over the course of its 12 corners, what we'll see is it is a moderate circuit when it comes to tyre stress, and in fact you've got some high load corners, but also you've got plenty of time to cool the tyres down on the back stretch. There is plenty of heavy braking here, and also plenty of trail braking, where it be the run uphill through turn number 1 into the heavy braking zone of turns 2 and 3, or alternatively the run through the S's to the tap of the brakes at turn number 5, and it's the harsh braking zones of turns 6, 7, and of course at the chicane at turns 10A and 10B. Overtaking wise, there's plenty of overtaking opportunities around here, minus the run through the S's at turns 2 through to 5, but otherwise turn number 1 is one of the very best overtaking opportunities, as is turns 10A and 10B. Off tracks, however, they are expected to be plentiful, because this is one of those circuits where you need to run literally from track edge to track edge in order to get the best possible lap time, but it's very easy to dip a tyre wide, and if a front tyre goes wide in these touring cars, you can very quickly expect them to run all the way understeering to the grass, if not the walls, because they're all front engine front wheel drive. Now, of course, we'll notice that on the circuit map, not just the overtake zones with the blue lines, but also the fact we've got markers for past incidents and early traffic jams. And a bit of a memory for those of you who are veterans of this series, like myself, you may remember in our season finale, the nighttime race at Road Atlanta, at turn number 5 in particular, one of our chief admins ended up, I don't know how he managed to do it, to this day nobody knows other than the man himself, although he's never quite revealed the secret of how he did it. Logan McKenzie, yes, that Logan McKenzie, our 6-time and most decorated champion of this series in the Alpha class, managed to put his Hyundai Elantra into the catch fence on the outside of turn number 5, and they couldn't get it down until after the race. It required 2 cranes and a whole wrecking crew to get it out of the fence, but in the end they managed to get it out, and nobody knows how he got it there. But that was on the exit of turn number 5 at the end of the S's, but we can expect incidents to occur all the way on the first half a lap, but far less on the second half a lap, because that's the nature of Road Atlanta. But that's a quick overview then of our host circuit, and a quick reminder of the rules for this round. This is an open setup series where our drivers bring their setup of their choice to each and every round of racing. In terms of our endurance race, it shall commence via a standing start, as is the tradition of the Alpha Touring Challenge. Indeed, that will apply for most, if not all, races. Drivers must change at least 1 tyre during the race. We are expecting there to be 2 pit stops over the race distance. However, they must change a tyre at some point. They can choose to change 1, they can choose to change multiple, but they must at least change 1 tyre on the car, otherwise they will receive a post-race penalty of an entire lap deducted off their race. service. Each driver has one fast repair available should they need to use it for damage, and the driver shall also make their way to the pit lane potentially if they're naughty enough to pick up 15 or more instant points, at which point they pick up a driver through penalty. Should they get to 30, they will be disqualified, and we hope we don't see that. Meanwhile, all race journeys shall be conducted post-race for any instance between drivers. Now, we've talked a lot, but what's more important is we show you the cars out of the circuit, so let's make our way back to circuit side. And as we do, well, we're not too far away from making our way into what will be our first qualifying session of the season. You'll have to forgive our time in the top centre of the screen. It may be a little bit inaccurate there, and indeed we might be skipping forward to our qualifying session in approximately about 5 minutes time at this point. But either way, as we look to Wojciech Stewards, one of our previous champions of the series, as he makes his way down, the Polish driver, highly decorated both on the American continent and also on the European continent. Arguably, you could refer to him as Mr. TCR, in the fact I still believe he is one of the only, if not the only driver to hold the iRacing official crowns for TCR official series all at the same time in a single season, plus also be the champion of both the Alpha Touring Challenge and also the Next Gen Racing Touring Car Challenge, the equivalent of the Alpha Touring Challenge, you could say, to some extent, on the European continent. And indeed, Wojciech Stewards, arguably the most decorated driver in TCR on the iRacing Sim service, and indeed he's raced against the very best out there, and you'll see him race against them once again today. And indeed, can anybody take a candle to this man? Well, arguably, yes, a man can, because in the pit lane right now, you can see him there. He's parked up and slightly obscure, but he's in the black and green machine. It is none other than Michael Polasek. He is your defending champion and now a 4-time champion of the Alpha Touring Challenge in the Alpha class. Indeed, he has been absolutely dominant for the past 4 seasons, 4 in a row. Can he make it 5 in a row this season and get one step closer to Logan McKenzie, this man who is currently your 6-time champion, the most decorated of our Alpha drivers out there, and right now he wants to try and put a 7th crown to his name and continue to expand his legacy. Well, as he makes his way on around, we should talk a little bit about our classes. Firstly, we have our Alphas. They're denoted, of course, by the blue sash in the time tower, and you'll also notice it on their decal boards, particularly on the driver's window banner, where they will have ATC in blue, as Logan McKenzie does his best impression there of a rallycross line out of turn number 1. Joking aside, that's a bit of understanding. That's how quickly you can pick up an off track at turn number 1 and find yourself very quickly taking a trip to the weeds, but he brings himself back on through the safety escape road. Now, we also do have our Deltas out there. This is a class you'll all be very familiar with, and a demonstration being given here by Chris McDonald. They are your equivalent of AM drivers, if you will, whereas our Alphas are your pro drivers. So you would imagine that the Deltas are towards the bottom end of the pace. However, that's not to say they're not here to improve and one day become Alpha drivers. However, we have added a transitional step to get you to Alpha if you're a Delta driver. That is, of course, our new class for this season, and hopefully it's going to become a mainstay of the Alpha Touring Challenge for the rest of its time, of which I think it will be eternal at this rate. It is none other than the Gamma class, being exhibited here by Zachary Bowman. And the Gamma class aims to be the Pro-Am class. It is an intermediary step between Delta and Alpha, and it gives drivers the opportunity to really experience battling in the midfield and starting to take the fight to your pros. So keep your eyes out for your Pro-Am drivers, or your Gamma drivers now. They will have the pink sash against their name in the time tower, and also on what will be the door banner cards, or the window banner cards we should say, and we look forward to seeing how all of our Gamma drivers get on. But what that does mean, of course, is that they will be making history more so than any other class this season, because it's the first time we've seen Gamma drivers out there, and all of our Gamma drivers will be looking to try and take the bragging rights of firstly the first ever pole position, which is coming up shortly, and also the first ever win in the class, and eventually the first ever Gamma champion, as we do look to the Beaver and D's machines of Raymond Tew. And right now, lovely livery on that Hyundai Veloster, I must say. And he's definitely encapsulated the pink vibe of the Gamma class all across his livery. I don't know if that was intentional or not, but if it was, I'll tell you one thing, he's definitely riding the wave of Gamma. And, well, it's definitely looking beautiful, that car. And hopefully it's going to be a beautiful set of results for him today. Although I'm not allowed to play favourites here in the quarantine booth, I can promise you that. But as he comes down towards the turn 10 chicane, well, who are your previous champions then in other regards? We talked about your defending Alpha champion. Well, in Delta, It's John Daniels who is your defending champion. Is he here today? That's the big question we're trying to answer. I don't think he is. I can't quite see him on the attendee list, but we do have 54 drivers here today at the Road Atlanta circuit, so you have to forgive me if I miss one or two of them along the way, because racing 30 cars around here is intense enough. 40, well, that's a little bit of an overhaul, and then 50 plus, well, you've got an absolutely stacked grid, and I do believe this is the second biggest grid ever in the Alpha Touring Challenge's history. Not quite pipping the biggest numbers it has seen. It's come very close to 60 in the past, but the fact that we've seen 54 drivers make it here today to the US state of Georgia, particularly near the town of Brazelton, is absolutely brilliant to see, and we look forward to seeing what's going to unfold in Hall County. But without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the maiden qualifying session of the season, and we will be right back to get it underway. And it is go, go, go. 10 minutes and all drivers make the way out onto circuit 9. They've only got 3 laps to try and get the job done. But as they all head on out the pit lane, well, they're all going to have to be very quick about it because they haven't got long. And the laps around here at Road Atlanta, whilst they're relatively short compared to several of the circuits we'll visit on the calendar, for example, the lap at Sebring and also at the Virginia International Raceway towards the end of the season, will almost be the best part of 40 to 50% longer in terms of overall time. All drivers will know they haven't got room for error, and therefore they need to make sure they nail these laps. Now, how many laps exactly have our drivers got? They've got the out lap, which you're seeing Zachary Leopold demonstrate here, and after that they then have 3 flying laps to try and get the job done. And with the overhaul of the TCR car model as of what was approximately 4 months ago on the iRacing simulator, it has completely changed the complexion of how these cars work in a qualifying mode. Of course, we did see that in Season 15, but just to reiterate, if you've missed Season 15, we'd strongly encourage you to go back and check it out. And I do believe the broadcast for that being brought by the man himself, Mr. TCR at Alpha Touring Challenge, and that is none other than Logan McKenzie, who did an absolutely brilliant job. And indeed, the fact that he's been running the series with the help of some other administrators and providing the broadcast, well, that goes to show you just how multi-talented and multifaceted Logan McKenzie is. But as Zachary Leopold makes his way on around, giving you the recap then. And the tyres now take much longer to warm up. They don't just immediately switch on after 1 out lap. So the idea as a result is what you need to do instead is essentially warm up the tyre on the out lap, then treat the first flying lap as a banker lap, and then at your second and third laps, you start to push more and more, with the third lap being what will be the precipice of your pace. The target then is going to be really just to build yourself up and wind yourself up, and as a driver that means you need to get into mental muscle memory rather quickly. And the idea being at Road Atlanta, as we'll give you an onboard lap or two in short order in this qualifying session, is the fact that this circuit, whilst it does have some brake markers for certain corners, for the most part this is a circuit you drive with memory, and particularly muscle memory. As the conditions evolve and as you look from left to right, you'll see some brake markers, but most of the time if you get into a mental rhythm around here, it's worth just as much pace as knowing exactly where the 50-meter board is, for example, coming up to what would be turn number 6 in the case here of Cooper Akers, one of our Gamma drivers. But as he gets ready to go onto the brakes there, we look forward to seeing how everyone will get on. Logan McKenzie decided to delay his exit of the pit lane, intriguingly, in the number 4 car, and I wonder whether he's given himself a bit more breathing room or perhaps made some last-minute tweaks to the car. Of course, keep in mind they do have plenty of facets they can change on these TCR cars with regards to the amount of rear wing they run, the gearing ratios. They can also change the suspension setup, the dampers, the roll bars, you name it, they can configure it, and therefore it's really going to come down to setting up the car for what will be your comfort and the track at hand, which are at Road Atlanta. This is one of those circuits which normally encourages quite a bit of downforce on the car, because whilst you've got a long back straight, you need the speed through the first 5 quarters or the first 40% a lap to make up the delta you perhaps lose down the back straight. But as Logan McKenzie roars his way onwards, we must look to another driver here making his way onto his first flying lap, or he's already onto it in fact, and I do believe that driver being none other than Michael Polasek, albeit we're just trying to find him at the moment, and here he is as he makes his way through the final quarter, and he goes onto his maiden lap, or he completes it and actually goes onto a second lap now. And Polasek comes across the time line of 1 minute 27.473. He puts the bar very high by default, already comfortably ahead of Wojciech Stewart. Oh, goodness me, Polasek runs wide. That's going to validate his second lap, and keeping in mind now that he's going to have to give it one more go a little bit later on, as we do see him come back onto the circuit. But a bit of a frustrating moment there for Polasek. Not an easy mistake to recover from, and well, he did a great job of recovering from it, but I can imagine right now that might just dampen his mood a little bit and may put him in a bit of a position whereby now he knows that the work is even harder as he goes on and on. But as all these drivers head on around, you'll have to forgive our time and tell there, it's been a little bit cheeky at the moment, but you'll see why it's been cheeky very shortly as we bring you the driver door numbers now, and also what will be your cars that they've chosen for this season, the brands at least. Keep in mind we do have two Hyundai types. We have the Veloster and the Elantra. We can't quite differentiate between those on the Time and Tower, but it gives you a feel for the three different brands. And we do know more TCR cars are coming as of 2026 Season 2's update to iRacing, and we'll place your bets as to what it'll be. If I had to place my bets, I think we're going to be getting the Cupra TCR. Alternatively, we might be getting the Hyundai Elantra Evo 2025 car. But I'm just opening up my crystal ball. I don't know anything more than you guys and girls at home. But what I do know is what a good flying lap can look like here around Road Atlanta. So we jump on board here with Michael Polasek as he takes us around for a flying lap of the circuit. So across the timeline he goes as Stewards now moves to visual pole, and Polasek looks to counter-attack, breaking his way then into turn number 1. A slight dab of the brakes there, about 100 meters a corner apex down to 4th gear. Now up the hill he goes, blind here as he rises to the summit, brakes at turn number 2 to set up the right-hander at turn number 3, and now it's on the throttle immediately through the curvature of 4, and in fact he backs off there. Polasek's not happy with the lap, he's decided to surrender. So as he makes his way back to the pit lane, we jump instead back aboard Wojciech Stewards, who takes us onwards, coming out of turn number 5. Now as he does so here, heading up towards turn number 6, he's already potentially got the provisional pole position, but can he rise the bar even higher? Can he go into the 26.9s? Well, as he ducks his way into turn number 6, and Fernandez now moves up to 3rd place. Was Stewards hard on the brakes here as he comes up through the right-hander, and now it's full throttle all the way down the back straight. But this is where we would expect what would be your drivers in the Honda Civic Type R's to struggle a little bit, because all these TCR cars all have the same end speed in terms of their top end speed, albeit the difference is in how they get there. And the Honda in particular, it is very slow in terms of its acceleration in 4th, 5th and 6th gear, albeit things being equal. The Audi's at the opposite end of the spectrum, and then the Hyundais are somewhere in between. But Stewards chucks the car into turns 10A and 10B as he makes his way on out here, using all the runoff area. I think that might be an invalidated lap, and yes it is. Stewards immediately ducks into the pit lane and says, right, that one's invalid, I've got to hope I've done enough. But meanwhile, Speedo driver may have done enough for Gamma pole position. Dan McFarlane there, your prime driver, he's up to 3rd overall. That's very impressive there, and he's ahead of James Carr by the best part of only, I say only, but right now 2 tenths. It is a huge margin there when you consider the pace and the gaps between drivers, but in particular look how tight it is from effectively what is 6th place man Francois Schenk all the way through to 35th place, and that's in the form of none other than Jonathan Bradford. You have got the best part there of what is a second separating them all. So right now, getting inside the bottom end of that top 10 is the equivalent of trying to find gold dust out there, as we look to Mark Darnell as he hops and skips his way down into the SS sequence. He's still got 3 minutes on the board here, and I believe right now he has completed all of his valid laps, so he's using this as a cool-down lap, plus also a spotting lap, which they're legally allowed to do, so long as they keep it on the circuit. And we look to Ronald Meffot instead, as he comes on through turn 6 and 7 here. He's on his final lap in the Honda Civic Type R. The Honda, if it hasn't got straight line speed, you may be wondering, what has it got then? It's got a lot of cornering capability, and also it's got the best brakes in the business when it comes to the current TCRs on the balance of performance. This is one of those cars whereby you can brake a bit later than everybody else, particularly versus the Audi, but also versus the Hyundais. And on top of that as well, it does seem to have the greatest potential in terms of its tyre life, albeit that comes a lot down to the driver as well as the car, because all these cars, based on the balance performance, weigh roughly the same, and therefore it all comes down to how the driver uses the brakes and protects the front tyres in particular. But Method makes his way out of the final major corner and over the crest, now down towards turn number 12 he goes. What's it going to be here? He's currently 11th in your deltas, 29th overall. He crosses the timeline, and by looks of things it's not going to be an improvement, but he knows he's on camera, so therefore he celebrates coming across that line. And we look to Evan Clavillo, and Clavillo's coming into the pit lane then as Hyundai Elantra. He's not quite happy with the end result, albeit I'd be happy with that. 2nd place Delta, 50th overall. But when Tyler Long has put himself in 9th place overall to take the Delta pole position, subject to the laps being clarified as valid, understandably, I think there might be a word or two under that helmet. It might be a bit of frustration. But we look to Adrian Fedorowski, and Fedorowski here down in 43rd place, but he's coming to the end of his qualifying in the number 22. And as he makes his way over the rise, it's not going to be enough there for Fedorowski. He decides to park up. 43rd will be the best start he can do. Aaron Lahr, meanwhile, in the lime green machine, he was all the way down in 53rd place. He's moved to 46th, and right now it hasn't quite worked out for La either, as Damon Mitchell has yet to set a valid time, and in fact he won't set a valid time because he's used up all 3 of his laps. Lewis Gilbert then is going to be your final driver in this qualifying session, I do believe, to complete a valid lap. What's it going to be for Gilbert? He was 48th, 30th of your deltas. He crossed that line, he improves to 29.706, but it's not enough to move up a position. But be happy with that. He's found a bit more time out there, and that could be invaluable in the race. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, the circuit begins to fall silent. We've got a couple of drivers calling the cars on down, albeit Hendricks' car there. Mika Hendricks, that is, a very renowned and reputable driver in the Alpha Touring Challenge. Indeed, he's pulled off some absolutely fascinating battles in the past. I still remember the time when he's tried to find a way around the outside of everybody at Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course back in Season 6, where I think in the end I said Hendricks more than I said overtake, because that's how many times he was making my heart jump out my chest. But right now, Hendricks definitely a very capable driver, and we look forward to seeing what he can do from 12th on the grid, albeit he's moved to the Audi over time from the Veloster, and I think he perhaps favours a little bit more power on the front end, because the Audi does have a lot of torque and a very strong gearbox. However, the only problem with it is, in the lower gears, it's got a very tight set of ratios by default, so you have to work quite hard with that gearbox to get the most out of it. But qualifying is complete, ladies and gentlemen. It's time to make our way to the grid for our opening race of the season. And here, of course, it's round 1 of Season 16 of the Alpha Touring Challenge at Road Atlanta. So as all our drivers make the way onto the grid, this is how they'll line up for our season opening race. And it is pole position there to Wojciech Swierdajczyk, in the end taking pole position for breakfast for dinner by a staggering what was 3 attempts. He'll be very pleased with that. The Yellow Flag Motorsport and defending champion driver of none other than Michael Polasek. He'll start in 2nd place, knowing that qualifying is just 1 lap of many that you need to do well at, and therefore he won't see it as a disadvantage if he can get a good start. Then it will be Dan McFarlane, who starts in 3rd place for Sim Racing Grid. He is your maiden Gamma pole sitter, and well done to McFarlane for a brilliant qualifying lap there to take the first ever Gamma pole position. He'll be joined on the 2nd row of the grid by Augustin Fernandez, and the Argentine will be followed up by Logan McKenzie for Pennzoil Super Touring, and then we will have, completing that 3rd row of the grid, none other than James Carr for Breakfast for Dinner. Franz Washing, he'll be starting in 7th place there for Curb Your Enthusiasm, ahead of Raymond Tube, and then we have completing your top 10, Tyler Long, who is your Delta pole sitter for T0 Racing Ascent. Well done to him on a brilliant pole lap there, making his way into the top 10 ahead of Mike Diomeda for Yellow Flag Motorsport, who queues in behind and lines up directly looking at the rear end of none other than the Beaver and D's Raymond Hughes car. Outside that top 10, we then do have, starting 11th place, it's going to be a Matt Shepka for Curb Your Enthusiasm, ahead of none other Now, Mika Hendricks of Croc Promotions. Then it'll be Connor Achitella, who starts in 13th place for Yellow Flag Motorsport, ahead of John Daniels, who is back on the grid. I was writing in that he was here. Your Delta champion racing in the Gamma class for this season. He's been promoted, and he'll be looking forward to seeing what he can do with that promotion. The T0 Racing Summit driver that will then be followed up by none other than Evan Claviol, and the Sim Racing Grid driver will have company on that row in the form of Zachary Leopold. We have Major Monsivai. He starts in 17th place, ahead of Kurt Smith, with the Breakfast for Dinner driver looking at the Formula Llama car in front of him and hoping he can make a quick pass in it, plus the privateer alongside him as soon as possible. If not, he'll find the company of both Pennzoil Super Tourings, Zachary Bowman there, two Zacharys in very close proximity, you have to forgive me, and then we do have Chris McDonald rounding off your top 20. In 21st place, it is going to be Cooper Akers there, the Pennzoil Super Touring driver, knowing he's got a bit of work to do after a difficult qualifying session. He will be ahead of none other than what is Jared Kalnins, the American driver, then be followed up by the Canadian of John Lauzon for Beaver and D's, the driver who in the middle of the pack recently is known for more bad luck than good luck, but does that follow him here into the Alpha Touring Challenge? We will wait and see. The Canadian we joined on the 12th row of the grid by none other than what is Jess Rakowski, and then we do have on row 13 Sean Gerd and Carl Flannery. Behind the Gasparilla Motorsport pair will be none other than the privateer of Zach Hudako, and he'll be in the company of Midpack Mafia's Andrew Bonilla Soto. Then completing your top 30, it is going to be the pairing of, firstly, Ronald Methot for Gasparilla Motorsport, and he will have the company of T0 Racing Ascent. Well, that's Carl Trost. Outside the top 30 then, we've got plenty more drivers to go through. We then do have Gareth McAllister for Monster Energy Racing ahead of Marco Mangano, and then it is Jason Lim for Gator Racing who starts 33rd ahead of his teammate of Mark Donnell, with Ford Aurelie starting in 35th place for Sayat G ahead of the privateer of Jonathan Bradford. Then on row number 19, we've got Nick Bader and Jason Breen with the Sim Racing Grid driver being followed up by another Delta pair there of Spencer Clark for Curb Your Enthusiasm Autosport and Joseph Heath That's your top 40. Then we do have in 41st place Austin Dunbar ahead of Carl Murray. Those two looked very close in qualifying. We look forward to seeing what they can deliver over the race distance. And then it's going to be Adrian Fedorowski starting in 43rd place for 212 Racing ahead of, I believe that is going to be Mitchell Richmeyer. And then from the Monster Energy Racing driver, it will be the privateer of Corey Lobner ahead of fellow privateer Aaron Lahr, with Andy Kosick starting in 47th place ahead of none other than what will be there Lewis Gilbert. And from the Crop Promotions driver, it will be a top 50 completed by the pairing of Marcel Thomas and Noah Namiak. And outside that top 50, to complete your starting order of 54 cars, it is Roger Shank. And also there, none other midpack mafias, Jalen Kuo, with Jeremy Barber 43rd for Monster Energy Racing. And last but not least, Crop Promotions, Damon Mitchell. Well, that's taking my breath away, just making it to the end of this starting grid, ladies and gents, but it is a packed grid out there. A grand total of 54 cars, all absolutely itching to go racing, but they're on the grid, and here come the lights. And it's lights out and away we go for our season opening race here of Season 16 of the Alpha Touring Challenge. Wojciech Swierdowicz gets a good start, but as they head in towards turn 1, look at Polasek tucking him right behind him. And meanwhile, defending hard at the inside, that's Dan McFarlane, who right now thinks had a bit of a slow start, recognises it. He hasn't quite launched the Elantra the way he wanted it to, and he's going to lose some ground. But up the hill they all roar, and as they do, an absolutely huge field. It's 2 by 2 as they head in towards turns 2 and 3. And some would say it's biblical, but this isn't Noah's Ark. This is touring car at its finest. On the inside there, a bit of a move being made from Clavio versus Smith. Couldn't quite make it happen, and Zachary Leopold meanwhile tucks in behind and watches. We had a couple of drives run wide. We had one drive start from the pit lane, I do believe. In fact, they've had to tow to the pit lane. That's Jeremy Barber, but they all immediately now run into a long line, albeit further back. The Delta Pack didn't quite get the memo here. 2 by 2 they come, and that's going to be Mangano versus Bader, and Nick Bader in the end hanging it around the outside. Nice work there in the 133 to be able to do so. That's not easy, but heading in towards turn number 6 right now. Well, all the drivers, if they weren't spawning for a fight, they will be already. The Delta cars absolutely brimming with battles, and you can see further back that Aaron Lahr immediately trying to make his way forward. He's already gained 3 places. Jalen Kuo has gained 10 places since the start of this race. How on earth he's done that, I do not know. But I can tell you one thing right now, that is monstrous of the Taiwanese driver. And as he makes his way down the backstretch of that Audi, I wonder if he fancies his chances of gaining a couple more. That's the biggest gain of anybody so far. And meanwhile, I've had some difficulty for James Carr as well, as all the way to the back of the field. But look at the very back. That is 4 wide at the rear of the field. We'll come back to the front of the field shortly, but there's battling everywhere. And right now, that's Kosick versus Fedorowski versus Gilbert versus Shank. Who's going to be taking the lead of this battle, because they're fighting for the right not to be last. I think it's going to be Fedorowski who puts himself in the middle of the road and beats the ball to the apex. As Kosick looks around the outside to inside here, and he tries to get it done. He can't, and Andy Kosick will be elbowed down as now they make the way over the crest. And here comes Shank up the inside of it, so Kosick will lose out. But meanwhile, right at the front of the field, let's not lose out on what's happening here. Lap number 2 comes through. And it's Wojciech Swierdowicz who leads after the open lap ahead of Michael Polasek, followed by Agustin Fernandez. Then it's Logan McKenzie. All of your top 4 are Delta drivers. Then you have your Gamma leader of Dan McFarlane, who started 3rd. He's dropped to 5th, but I don't think he'll be too upset about that. He's still got a bit of time between himself and the next Gamma driver of Raymond Tiu. And including that, they've also got the Delta of Francois Schink between the 2 of them. Then it's Tiu, followed by Tyler Long, your Delta leader, who started in 9th, has moved to 8th, and he's got Mike De Almeida behind him, and Matt Shep who complete your top 10. But Long is the only Delta inside that top 10 at the moment, with your second place Delta being Evan Claviol. And as Clavio right now will be looking at this and thinking, okay, I've had a good start, I've gained 1 place, but I need to gain a few more. And that's easy said than done, to be fair, and that will apply for all our drivers. They roar their way onto this second lap, and plenty more to come. But John Lauzon right now finds himself in the company of Delta champion, promoted to Gamma, of John Daniels. Your season 15 champion won't be able to defend that right, but to be fair, he'll want to defend this place right now versus Lauzon as they fight over 9th in Gamma. Down they come in towards the braking zone. Lauzon's going to be on the inside there. It's going to be straightforward. The answer is no, and as they make their way through, in fact, it was on the outside there, let me correct myself. And as they make their way over the hill, the Beaverbuzz Energy driver now cutting back to the inside of turns 11 and 12. They'll be 2 wide on entry in the Velosters here, and right now Lauzon will get the upper hand. But Zachary Bowman, we ride on board with, he looks at this and he thinks, okay guys, if you're going to fight this hard, let me become a player in this one. He's going to go up the inside, but Lauzon breaks very early there. I think on the inside line, respect to the fact that Daniels needs to coexist with him, and so Bowman had to back off. but as they now make the way over the crest, he's going to try and push it here. He's onto the grass, and in the end, Bowman's given the space to run it. Will that be considered an off-track? Will he have to give the time back? Well, right now, no sign as they go too wide into this, as you don't do this in touring car or in any cars at Road Atlanta. And in the end, John Daniels realises you can't do it and backs out just in the nick of time. Otherwise, he would have found himself on the grass, and I think he would have been doing his best rallycross impression through there. But as they come on through, that's some dust kicked up. I believe that's the car of Kurt Smith up the road, who ran a bit wide out of turn number 5. But behind this is causing a bit of a budding queue. And here comes Gareth McAllister looking for a move on Jess Rakowski for 6th place in Delta. What is going to be the best part of 23rd overall, making some quick ground here as they roar the way out. And remember, of course, we have multiple teams championships at play. We have the Alpha Teams Championship, which is your overall teams championship for the season, where drivers of any class could contribute to it. And then we have your Delta Teams Championship, which is for Delta driver teams only, and therefore they'll be trying to contribute to that one as much as they will the Alpha overall title. And we'll talk more about those honours, which we didn't talk about earlier on, later in this broadcast, if there's time, because right now we've got so much racing action going on here, it'd be rude of us not to talk about it. But looking at a bit further down the order, even more so, Noah Namak, he's now looking to get onto the back of Kuo, who's continuing to push forward. But right now, I think Namak is thinking, you know what, I might be able to take this place back. And then suddenly the Rothmans liveried Audi says, no you don't. And the 900 right now is looking at this and thinking, but yes I do. And in the end, it's going to be a bit of a disagreement between these two all the way onto lap number 4. As we look back from the rear of the best starter of this race so far, the Midpack Mafia driver, who definitely, if he wanted to announce that he is going for the Naked Aggression Award, which is the most overtakes over the entirety of the season, well, Kuo's definitely laid claim to it nice and early on here with 12 overtakes so far, more to come. But there's been a bit of drama up the road. We've got Mangano going very slowly there. I think he's had a trip to the grass at turn number 1. Has he been joined by somebody? That's the query and the question. And it doesn't look as though he has at the moment, or if he has, he's left that person very far behind. But Mangano is going to drop all the way down to what will be 47th place. And all that progress he made early on has been for naught. But then again, there's still plenty of race to go. We're only 5.5 minutes in. We've got another 54.5 minutes plus a final lap to talk about. But right now, we've been talking so much about what's going on further down the order, we need to come back to the front. Because here is Michael Polasek right now leading by only half a second over Wojciech Swierdowicz, with Agustin Fernandez tucked in behind. But it does seem as though your top 5 right now, all of Deltas, because Franz Hosching has found his way past Dan McFarlane, now starting to walk away a little bit here, as we see them all in that lovely camera shot come roaring on through the corners. And, well, it's absolute speed aplenty there, but more importantly, look at this. As we ride on board the nose of your second place Gamma driver, this is Raymond Tew, the Beaver and D's driver, who he's looking for an opportunity to take on Dan McFarlane. And whilst they may be in the Gamma class, he'll be feeling like a true Sigma if he's able to make the move. I think that's how the youngsters say it in this modern era. Correct me if I'm wrong, ladies and gentlemen. I'm a bit of an old man when it comes to modern slang. But right now, the Beaver and D's driver keeping nice and close to the back of McFarlane. And McFarlane, intriguingly, is not showing the pace he had in qualifying necessarily. Now, what could this be attributed to, perhaps you may be asking? Well, he hasn't really put a foot wrong so far. And I think McFarlane, if he was under pressure from the Deltas in front of him, he's done the right thing to let, well, not the Deltas, the Alphas in front of him, I should say. He did the right thing to let them go when they were behind him. And therefore, I think the idea is now that McFarlane can just focus on his race and make sure the next guy behind him doesn't get through, because he actually matters. However, one other thing to consider is the fact that he is in the Hyundai Elantra. And we talk about this a lot in the TCR class. The Elantra is a very interesting car in the fact it's a bit of a princess when it comes to its tyres. It's very quick. Some would say it's the fastest car in the TCR class, but of course that's balance of performance and setup dependent. And also circuit dependent before anybody adds that into the equation. But the most important thing is the fact the Elantra over one lap has monstrous capacity for pace. Over a long race, the difficulty with it is very exposed on its front tyres to tyre temperatures and degradation as a result. And therefore, you would imagine that McFarlane might be aware of this, and perhaps right now he's backed off the pace a little bit just to help protect his tyres deeper into the race, because we have seen in previous seasons the Elantra drivers normally have a lot of pace for the opening 30 minutes of these endurance races, and it's in the latter half, if they choose only to change a limited number of tyres, indeed they will likely change both of the front tyres in the Elantras, we would suspect. That's where you'll suddenly see that the Elantra will start to fall off the proverbial cliff. And in terms of the fuel loads, I do believe they're running quite a light fuel capacity for these endurance races, only the best part of around 25% fuel, and that is going to mean in turn that we're expecting at least 2 pit stops for the fuel load to get to the end. So therefore tyre management and also fuel management will both go hand in hand, and a bit of fuel saving would not be a bad idea. And you can do fuel saving through lift and coast into the braking zones, and also through short shifting, although the lift and coast method is a much stronger method by comparison. And by short shifting, What you do is essentially you help reduce the amount of revs that go through the front tyres, so the short shifting can help with the tyre degradation, and meanwhile lift and coast can help with the fuel saving. But that's enough of the strategy. Let's take a look back to your front of your Delta class, and this is Carl Trost versus Mark Darnell and Ronald Mefford. As Mefford, they're getting elbowed out by Trost, and suddenly Mark Darnell says, okay, it's time for me to play. And right now it's a very hungry pack of Hondas, not Hippos there, your eyes do see correctly. As they make the way on down the back stretch, at the very front of it is a singular, what is Hyundai Elantra in the form of Sean Gerd, who's being practically pushed along at the moment. In fact, that's not Gerd, that is Carl Tost. I'll correct myself, but Tost right now being pushed along quite a bit by everybody else behind, and Trost right now absolutely in one of those positions whereby I think all the Hondas behind him would like to find a way through, and Trost is trying to say to them, please, no, you do not. But they're all very eager to show their pace, and I would imagine that very soon that one of them is going to fancy their chances, including, of course, our series photographer, Jason Lynn. More on him in a bit, as here comes what is a move from Darnell up the inside of Trost in towards turn number 1. He goes for it, but now Trost is going to hold it. It's free wide over the crest. Lynn's going to go all the way to the inside here. Here they go on the brakes, and well, it's going to be elbows out. There's going to be Trost sent to the grass. Darnell in the air manages to sweep on through, and Jason Lynn gains a place as well, but I think that one might go to the stewards after the race there. Trost is not going to be happy because as he rejoins, he's falling down the order like a stone here. 2 wide with none other Joff and Bradford and also Corey Lobner, and in the end, Trost manages to stay ahead of them, but Joseph Heath does past him, and meanwhile Lobner and Bradford have to sort themselves out as well. Jason Breen's a little bit further back there, trying to get into the fight. It is getting very tense and terse between them all, and this Delta class right now, I can tell you one thing, it's our biggest class of the grid, and it's, well, the biggest by a good margin for a good reason. It's absolutely full of budding touring car racers, and they're all absolutely loving themselves out there, and whether they're Delta, Gamma or 30 Alpha, they're all absolutely loving it out there. As meanwhile, here's a change of position in Gamma. That's going to be for 7th place in the class, or 15th overall. This is Major Monsivai. He's looking to make sure that Cooper Akers can't get the place back off of him as they make the way onto another lap. 2 wide they enter into turn number 12. The sweeping right-hander to complete the lap. A very fast and very high load corner on that front left tyre. And here comes Akers now on the inside. He's already going for it, I can tell you that, and the Pennzoil machine is going to get the place back as Monsivai in the end runs a bit too deep, and he's going to bring the car back together, but it's not in a good spot as he now brings himself over the crest and down the hill he goes. And as these drivers continue to push onwards, meanwhile Ronald Meffott here, battling side by side with Kyle Flannery, the car in front of him, the very light-for-light livery machine, because they are teammates, and well, the number 1 rule of racing, of course, is to beat your teammate. The number 2 rule is you don't take your teammate out or inconvenience your teammate. And right now, that's a very difficult one for Meffott to deal with, for the simple reason here, he's got a long queue of cars behind him in that Delta class, and this is the run from 27th all the way through to 39th, with Adrian Fedorowski bringing up the rear of this group, and they're all looking at each other with what is eager anticipation of what's to come next. But speaking of what's to come next to this broadcast, we're going to take a look back at some of the moments from earlier on in the race, ladies and gentlemen, starting with what exactly went wrong for Damon Mitchell at the very beginning of the race. And well, we'll just hold fire on that as a bit of change of position there, and then we will take a look back in time. And here we go as we look back to what happened to Damon Mitchell. So as they went green flag racing, Mitchell started from the very rear of the field with no valid qualifying lap, and a bit of a tap there with your 53rd place starter. That was none other than Fawad Al-Rahi, who in the end he came into goal. Oh my good lord, that's not right at all. For Damon Mitchell sent into the stratosphere, and well, his race suddenly coming crashing down to earth. That's not the way anybody wanted it to go. We also did have this for none other than, I believe, Jeremy Barber, and this replay courtesy of Arturo Mogo. In fact, Barber was the one who went his way into him, so in the end it all went wrong between those two. And then we had a bit more later on. This happened on lap number 2, and this was the incident between Angel Bonilla Soto and, well, in fact Soto had gone off circuit. How did he get there in the first place, I wonder? And the car had to be towed in the end due for damage. But what exactly sent him there in the first place? Here's a further replay to explain. So it was already out of turn number 1. Oh my goodness, somebody else into the barrier there. I think that was Aureli in there as well. And as Soto tried to rejoin, the car went to the grass. We haven't quite caught what started that. I think we might get it from Kurt Smith's perspective. Here we go. This was Smith into turn number 1 on lap number 2. What exactly happened between these drivers? And well, Smith just went a bit too wide. So I think multiple drivers in the end just made a mistake. Smith had to rejoin and did so quite comfortably, albeit he would have had his heart in his chest beating quite hard as a result of that error. But thankfully, nothing too bad about it. We then had this for Dan McFarlane. And this is McFarlane, I think, having a bit of a difficult moment. Yes, it was on the exit of turn 1. This explains actually how he lost out to Francois Schink, and then he rejoined. But as he did so, well, he then found his way off the road a little bit more, and that's how your Gamma leader fell into the clutches of Raymond Tew. So it was not because Schink had just been let go, it was a mistake from McFarlane, and in the end the pressure is building little by little. And we just had this happen on lap number 8 to Jelin Kuo, and this was Kuo making his way down into the S's. Wound his way on down. Well, what exactly went wrong here? It must have been, oh, goodness me, a bit too much curb there for the latter part of the S's, but straight line the grass, and then had to lift off because of a automated slowdown penalty, which he would have served, and very quickly put himself back up to pace, but not without losing a couple more places, including there to none other than Spencer Clark, who tucked up the inside of him. So back to your live pictures we go. Now, all these replays, of course, courtesy of Arturo Mayorga, who developed the software that's enabled us to provide you with replay footage with an iRacing replay file. And a big thank you to Arturo, who works very closely with multiple North American and American Continent series. But as we come back to your live racing action and we get our timer back on screen, we've still got another 15 minutes of this race to pass before we get to the halfway point. And that's elbows out there for Adrian Fedorowski as he looks over at Aaron Lahr. And, well, no love lost between those two. Indeed, they've got quite a rivalry between the two of them, I do believe, and here comes Lahr back at him in an Audi, which there's only one problem with that Hyundai Veloster. For all the all-roundedness it has, it's a jack-of-all-trades, master of none car. That Audi is going to eat it up on the back straight here, particularly with a draft as well. Here they go down, elbows out still between these two. Keep it clean, gentlemen. We don't want to see car parts everywhere. We don't want to see any more cars going up into their roofs here at Road Atlanta. That seems to be a theme whenever we've covered racing here. But as it goes a little bit too late on the brakes there, Lahr comes on. There's more contact between the two of them. And Aaron Lahr in the end wanted to rejoin. Fedorowski tried to say to him no. And, well, I think there's going to be words between the two of them after the race. Fedorowski's parked up there. You can just see the car over the crest of the hill, and well, I think Fedorowski with that contact, damage has been picked up and his race comes to a close. I think they'll both be thinking afterwards, once the red mist has cleared, could we have done better? And the answer from the stewarding team will be yes, you probably could have, albeit we're in the commentary booth here, ladies and gentlemen, and therefore we're not going to pass judgment on it. But meanwhile, as we look back to your leaders here, they're now starting to come up behind a little bit of upcoming lap down traffic, including your 49th place runner of none other than Damon Mitchell, who they're closing up to quite quickly after he got the car repaired from an absolutely huge shunt at the start of the race before he even managed to get across the start-finish line. But as Logan McKenzie watches on behind Fernandez, Francois Schink, meanwhile, well, he's also cutted his way through a little bit of traffic with Dan McFarlane also now coming up behind it, and Raymond Tew has fallen back a bit further. In fact, Tew's now 3 seconds behind McFarlane. And I do have to wonder whether Tew here has just had a bit of a difficult lap. And in terms of his lap times, last lap he was half a second slower. This lap, as they come across the timing line, it was for McFarlane a very similar lap, another 28.31 for McFarlane. In fact, practically identical, so his consistency is unrivaled, some would say. And Raymond Tew, meanwhile, was the best part of 600 slower, but he was much faster compared to his previous best. So I wonder if Tew's just had a bit of a mistake, as he makes a complete mess there of the run out of turn number 3. You can see the car drifting. He carried too much speed, caught it on the curb into turn number 4, but he had to lose a lot of speed there in order to do so. He's lost another half a second. Matt Shepka, meanwhile, we look a bit further back. He's your full place Gamma driver. He's stuck behind Mika Hendricks at the moment as Hendricks runs out very wide there at turn number 5. It is a legal line, but keep in mind when you drop off that exit curb, it's a very high curb. It rattles the suspension around and it can actually cause the rear of the car to bounce loose. Even, yes, in a touring car, which is front engine, front wheel drive. Well, the front does the work and the engine's in the front, so all the weight is there. But as they make the way out to turn number 7, we can see that right now Shepka wants Hendricks to get a move on here, because otherwise Connor Achitella, Tyler Long, Zachary Leopold and Evan Claviol, they're all going to be pushing each other here along this back stretch. And right now for Hendricks, I think he's looking at his rearview mirrors and thinking to himself, okay guys, I can only deal with one of you at a time. And right now Shepka, I think, is going to have to make a decision soon, which is either to start thinking a little bit about strategy, or alternatively he's going to need to force a pass here on Hendricks, because this field is losing the next set of cars, and the next 3 cars on the road are important to Shepka because they are the top 3 of Gamma. But on to the next lap they turn, and as they do, looking a bit further back, we look to Evan Clavio, who has Cooper Akers up the inside of him. Akers takes that place then for 14th overall, and meanwhile Clavio now looking for an opportunity to get back at him. But I would say that Clavio needs to put a smart head on here. It's not to say he isn't thinking about it already, and that exit line out of turn 1 is a bit of an aggressive one. It's to look to the inside of 3, but I think Clavio needs to think about the pack in front and realise that Tyler Long is caught up in this. And right now, can he use this to a tactical advantage, as we are starting to see some drivers into the pit lane? Nick Bader's coming in. Kyle Murray's also coming in. This might be the sign of the first pit stops here today, because we were expecting 2 stops, and well, based on symmetry, you would split the race into 3 20-minute stints, as that's the car from the Jacks there for Kyle Murray. He's getting that tyre change out the way immediately. More cars coming through, and right now we've only got a couple of cars into the pits. We also do have Kuo making his way into the pit lane there, so he's going to do some more overtaking, but I don't think he'll be too upset about that. Lewis Gilbert right now, he's on the back of Roger Shank, but also he's got Marcel Thomas and Marco Mangano behind, and Mangano, of course, having that off track earlier on, lost a lot of places that he gained, but right now the man who's running 42nd on the road at least, well, he can see the targets in front of him, and with the flames on the side of the car, there's always the joke, of course, in the car modifying scene, that when you do wrap a car with flames, it doesn't make it go any faster, but it looks faster, and it looks quite fierce right now as we jump on board. Where is he? Rides the rear there. Oh, Thomas coming out of turn number 5, and right now the privateer eager to make some progress in that Hyundai Elantra M, as he gets himself set on the brakes here, chucking the car into turn number 6. You can see in the body language how confident he is. Looking up the inside, he'll poke Thomas there for a potential move, get his nose in, and Thomas in the end does not fight it too hard, respecting the fact that Mangano is going for the move nice and early, and Thomas doesn't want to lose what is the rest of the pack in front. Smart driving from both here. Mangano, he knows he's got the pace, he can go for the move. Meanwhile, Thomas respecting the fact that maybe he's not as quick, and therefore just opts instead to back off. But as they make the way down, now it's going to be a reversal here, and in fact Thomas decides to put some pressure on Mangano, and well, that's more to defend versus James Carr, who's going to go around the outside there. Carr right now looking one way then the other in the breakfast of dinner machine, and the number 19 heads over the rise, and for him it's not quite a move on Thomas at the moment, as we've got more cars into the pit lane, particularly from lower down in the field. We've also got Rakowski, Bradford, Breen, and I believe Dunbar and Namiak into the pit now. And also Jason Lynn and Kurt Smith are still being serviced, so there's plenty in store in the pits. But meanwhile, we come back towards your Deltas at the very front, and the fighting between them, well, it's taking its next step, and it's in a good direction if your name is Logan McKenzie, because he's getting closer and closer to Fernandez. Meanwhile, for Augustin Fernandez, he'll be wondering exactly why he can't stay with the top 2, but he's definitely being caught by the man behind him. And they have trailing them the lap-down car now of Kyle Murray, who is watching on and gradually falling away, but he'll make some observational notes, and he'll see where he can potentially gain some time by following these Alpha drivers for a period of time. But up the hill they go, 20 minutes complete now. We've still got plenty more laps to be turned here at Road Atlanta. It's been a fantastic race so far, and now we're into the first part of strategy, as we've got a lot of cars into the pit lane here. It is almost as if they were all called on the radio at once. Can everybody pit, please? I can assure you it wasn't that. The fuel tanks are just running dry, and everyone's tried to take the fuel tank as fast as they can. But some have been able to take it further. Here, for example, is Jared Kaunins, who's been able to run the car up the hill here in the number 20. And as he does so, Kaunins right now, I think thinking to himself that by getting an extra lap early on through some fuel saving and some smart driving, he's actually bought himself more strategic opportunities. Because remember, every extra lap you can do on the opening stint gives you more options on your second stint, and it means your final stint can be a shorter one. Now, how does that translate strategy-wise with the tyre change that's mandated? Well, if you're planning to change both of the front tyres, the idea is you don't change the tyres on your first pit stop if you go long on that stop. Instead, you potentially stay on the same set of tyres, and then by trying to make your second stint even longer, if not the same length, when you change the tyres in your final pit stop, you're going to have the lightest possible car because it has the least amount of fuel in it, and you have the freshest set of tyres on the car to go attacking. The only downside, of course, of this approach is the fact you're running on a slower race pace, theoretically, and therefore you may be vulnerable to overtakes early on, but that's where, by going for the overcut, you pull yourself out of the battling over the course of what is that transition from stint 1 to stint 2. So if everybody else pits before you, they're all going to fight each other. But into the pits comes the rest of the front runners then, and you can see that from the camera that's absolutely vacant of cars on only little camera there. But as they make the way all in, all your leaders in: Polisek, Sweardych, Fernandez, McKinsey, your top 4 of your Alphas. Then you've got your Gammas and McFarlane and De Almeida, and then we've got Hendricks as well from Alpha, and then we've got the rest of the top 10 in the form of Achitel and Leopold from the Gammas, and McDonald and Kaunins all in now. So who is going to pick up the pieces here? Evan Claviot, he might be one of the drivers to do so because of the fact he did pit on the previous lap. So therefore he'll be hoping that perhaps this is going to give him an opportunity to jump ahead, as Jared Kaunins, the car right now going up onto the jacks there, waiting to be completed in its service. Who's coming out? Dan McFarlane, he's leaving his pit box, but that's a change in the lead of the Gammas, because that is Mike De Almeida who makes his way ahead, and he has been able to get ahead on the jump stop versus McFarlane and John Lauzon, who pitted earlier than them by the best part of 2 laps. He's now moved up into 3rd place. So there's a change, and this is going to add a bit of intrigue as Clavio as well has moved into the Delta lead. Clavio has leapt ahead, and Tyler Long, meanwhile, has had, this is not a pun on his surname, I can promise you, he's had a long pit stop. Now that might be a sign that Long has decided to change tyres in that first pit stop, because his pit stop time was 24.43 seconds versus Clavio's total pit time of 15.8. Well, that was stationary, and that would be a sign there, because I do believe, as per the pit stop regulations for TCR racing, that fuel and tyres must be done separately. They can't be done simultaneously. But right now, let's throw the regulation book out the window, because that was fighting between Zachary Leopold and John Daniels there for 7th place in Gamma. And, well, these two get it very firm with each other. Leopold has changed tyres on the car. Meanwhile, Daniels has not, as we're to understand it. And John Daniels right now still fancying his chances here. Now, those who changed tyres early on, what this means for them is they now have the fresher car for the middle stint. But remember, those who have not changed tyres, they will have a car that is a bit worn down, but the tyres are definitely all warmed up. And that's why I think what Leopold's trying to get through right now is the fact that he's got to get these tyres back up to temperature. But Daniels is going to carve up the inside immediately. Switching back here now around the outside of 10B, and as they head over the rise, well, Daniels will get that move done, but you can expect that Zachary Leopold will be back on the attack shortly as we ride on board here with the number 72, the Formula Llama driver right now on the attack as he roars his way down towards turn number 1. Will he immediately go for the swing into the opening corner up the inside? No, he won't. They do have Cooper Akers only 3 tenths behind them, so Akers is going to be looking at this and thinking about his opportunities. But over the hill they come, and in the end, Leopold just holds that position as they come down into turn number 3, but he runs deep, and that's going to gift an opportunity there for Akers to think about it into the S's, but he decides not to as we look out the rear of the 72. And then you can see as well, Tyler Long, your 2nd place Delta driver. This is not going right for Long right now because of the fact that Clavio, whilst he has not changed his tyres, Clavio's not fighting anybody. He's got clear track in front of him, and therefore for Long, because of the queue he's got in front, theoretically he will start to lose time. He will need to pick away through these drivers or hope they stop fighting each other. He can't pit early because he's got to get the car to go the best part of at least another 15 to 20 minutes on its fuel tank to make sure he can get to the end of the race on the next fuel tank fill up. So that's where the strategy now starts to play out. Meanwhile, when you look a lot further down the order, where it's all Deltas all the way from 20th through to 40th place, it is a lot more straightforward here, which is be ahead of all your rivals and beat them to the finish. Albeit there is strategy, let's not be unfair to them as we look to Carl Trost here, who's all over the back of Mark Darnell for 11th place in Delta right now, and the number 21 Elantra there looking very good on quarter exit. He has taken that tyre change, as has Darnell, but on that exit right now absolutely keyed up there on the Elantra's tyres as he makes his way on down the stretch. In terms of the weather here today, we do have an ambient of 18 degrees centigrade and there's a track temperature of 20 degrees centigrade, so it's cool temperatures. That means the Elantra's not going to be as exposed on its front tyres compared to as it would be as we go upwards of 30 or 40 degrees track temperature, and under braking here that will be shown because he's just able to sweep his way around the outside his Trost, and that's another move made there for the T0 Racing Incorporated driver as now he moves to a length. His next target will be Ronald Meffott, who's just a bit further up the road by 1.1 seconds. But from their fighting, we come back to the front of the field because here's Logan McKenzie and Agustin Fernandez. These two have swapped places. McKenzie has found his way ahead. It was in the pits where the swap happened. And right now, both of them pitted on lap number 15. But McKenzie was the one who made the overtake in the pit lane. But Fernandez has not been dropped. Your top two of Pulisic and Swierdijk, they're a bit further up the road by 3 seconds. And right now for those two, they're running their own races independent of each other in a way. You could say really that right now Pulisic and Swierdijk are 1-2, and that seems to be where they're locking into, whereas McKenzie and Fernandez right now just running as they are. They're really the big fight at the front of the field for the final overall podium spot as well as the final podium spot in the Alpha class. Coming over the crest there, and we look back meanwhile to Dan McFarlane, who has found his way back ahead of Mike de Almeida, and that's happened off camera. I wonder if we can potentially get a replay of that. Yes, we can. How did he make the move happen? Well, we'll come to that shortly, because first we need to keep an eye on this battle for 3rd place, because right now it is the battle of the Velosters, and it does seem as though that McKenzie is under increasing pressure here to hold on. Fernandez really breathing down his neck as they roll the way into the S's for the 19th the time of the asking. But here's the 956 car that is looking to be the faster machine at this point, as McKenzie, we can see in the body language there, coming into turn number 5, McKenzie's car very straight, whereas Fernandez riding those curves and really letting the car bounce around. What does that mean? It means that McKenzie may not feel as comfortable with the way the car's set up to ride the curves, whereas Fernandez, definitely right now, where he mounts the curves or not, he can really chuck the car at the circuit, and a little bit of setup differences there might be giving Fernandez more confidence through what is that early portion of the lap, whereas McKenzie has to be very precise. He has to be on the very straight and narrow. If he's not, then the car will really struggle through there, and that's what's cost him a bit of time and pace. But as they make their way down the backstretch, meanwhile, you can see Fernandez gaining little by little, but not as much, and perhaps there's a bit less rear wing on McKenzie's car, and perhaps that's giving him a bit of breathing room, but Fernandez is going to look for the move here on the inside either way, and in the end, McKenzie's not going to fight it too hard. He'll let it go, but I think right now for Logan McKenzie, surely he's got to have an alternative plan in mind. He's got to be thinking to himself, okay, with the way we're fighting, how close we are, there's got to be some sort of strategic element in here, because he tucks right back in behind Fernandez. They go on to the next lap, and I suspect we're going to see more of a back and forth between them before long. But we kept you waiting for that replay for the Gamma lead change, and here we go back in time, ladies and gentlemen, to see how exactly Dan McFarlane made his way back into 5th place. And this was coming down the back stretch here. McFarlane on De Almeida. Almeida defended to the inside as they headed into the braking zone. With the Elantra driver there on McFarlane, hard on the anchors. Around he went. And well, De Almeida, he went for it under braking to defend, but McFarlane just had a bit more confidence, and that is how the move was done. Let's head back to your live racing. So as we come on back, we're almost at the halfway point of this race now, and there's still plenty of story to unfold here. Still plenty of questions to be answered. And well, while those big answers firstly is, can Evan Clavio enjoy what might just be a very well calculated first pit stop, because we're looking at Major Monsivais, but Monsivais right now tucking in behind Clavio, your leader in the Delta class, and well, Clavio has nobody in front of him to battle with per se. He's getting a distance off the back of Francois Schink's Honda, so this is working out quite nicely for Clavio. And Monsivais right now, I wonder whether he's thinking, do I just stay behind the Delta leader here, or do I need to pass him? The attitude there would suggest that perhaps he's doing what is the former rather than the latter, which is just stay behind and be a little bit patient. And that patience may prove quite prudential as they go towards the end of this second stint, albeit they've got another 10 to 15 minutes of the stint to go, where there's not as much thinking with regards to strategy and more outright fighting here. This is more at a tactical level, we'd like to say. This is the fight between 8th, 9th and 10th in Gamma. That is Akers, Achatella and Daniels. And Daniels, oh, goodness me, that's out wide there. Achatella, how did he keep that on the road? I do not know, but in the middle, there comes Zachary Bowman. But then he backs out there. I think Bowman looked at it and thought to himself, you know what, perhaps I can squeeze in between. And then realised that going for the Moses manoeuvre into turn 1 at Road Atlanta is ill-advised, but he really did give it a go, no doubt about it. But as they make their way down in towards the S's right now, well, Achatella there, I do not know how he managed to keep that on the road, but I can tell you one thing right now, that the yellow fuel motorsport driver, he managed to avoid bringing out the yellow flags. He roars his way out of the corner. In fact, I think that's yellow flag motorsport there, not yellow fuel. My goodness, getting my names completely mixed up there. But as they make their way in towards turn number 6, right now Achatella the 55, enjoying the car, even if it means going a bit sideways on the grass. Well, as he makes his way in towards turn number 7, if anybody was to ever tell him to touch grass, he can definitely tell you he's touched it plenty of times, particularly in this race today. But as we look to Bowman and Tyler Long behind, for Tyler Long right now, understandably, there's a bit of frustration perhaps brewing here, looking at all the Gamma drivers in front. But of course, if he's running to their pace and he's perhaps able to do some fuel saving, that frustration may turn into long-term contentment. But we'll have to wait and see what will happen with Clavio when he has his second pit stop, and whether Long can get back at him, or what will be expected to be a much shorter pit stop by comparison. That's going to be the challenge. We'll have to see what's going to play out. Looking a bit further back in the Delta class, here's Jess Rakowski under pressure from Carl Flannery. Flannery in the white and blue Honda, looking for the move on the black and red Elantra. Rakowski as they head in towards that chicane. Here comes Flannery, then goes all in, but meanwhile Rakowski says no, and right now Flannery says I wasn't asking, and Rakowski says we'll go play with Bradford instead. And well, now Rakowski finds that Flannery has to go to defensive there versus Jonathan Bradford. And Bradford, who's gained 11 places in Delta since the start of the race, he's looking to pick up a few more. Bradford's definitely had a good run of this race so far. He is the biggest Delta gainer at this point in the race distance, and we look forward to seeing what he can do next. There's car off the road there. We're trying to see who that is off the road. They're rejoining. I think that's Jeremy Barber, who's had a trip to the grass. And, well, as he does rejoin, we'll see where he comes back onto the road. He's come back on there in the 167, the Monster Machine. And well, it's been a bit of a frustrating race so far as he now goes 2 laps down. But do keep in mind, a driver is classified as having finished the race so long as they finish with more than half the number of laps of the race leader completed. So, if our race leader, who we come to here, because we haven't seen him on camera for some time, if Michael Polasek, for example, was to complete this race after 40 laps, so long as a driver has done 21 or more laps, they will be classified for the purposes of the result and taking championship points. So that's why everyone's encouraged to not retire from the race, even if they end up a lap down due to circumstances within or outside of their control. Stay in it, because you can always pick up some points, so you never know what can happen until the final checker flag. Because as we always say in motorsport, anything can happen, and it normally does. But Michael Polasek right now, making his way through turn at number 5, he finds a little bit of traffic in front of him, and that traffic's negotiating itself, but understandably a bit of a flash of lights there, because he does not want his hard-earned lead of 2.8 seconds over Wojciech Swierdowicz, you see a bit further behind. He does want that lead to be brought down, but Swierdowicz has got his own challenges to pass here, including firstly what is the 228 in front of him, and that is the car of Marcel Thomas that's battling with Lewis Gilbert for 24th in Delta or 43rd overall. So they're going to be staying quite close together, but Swierdowicz will take a little bit of solace in the fact he has got the draft here he can use, but the blue flags will be waved here, and therefore the cars in front of him will need to be cognizant that they will have a lead lap car trying to pick its way past. And so Swierdowicz, they're pulling to the outside, and will he go for the swing back to the inside now? Yes, he will. He'll pick off one of them at least under braking and make it quite clear that he is taking that place, and that place now off of Marcel Thomas. Next up will be Lewis Gilbert, who goes a bit deep there out of turn 10B, and actually this works out for Swierdowicz quite nicely. He doesn't really lose any time. In fact, Polasek has just finally found his way past the pair of none other than Damon Mitchell and Roger Shank, and he's lost 4 tenths in that process. And of course, traffic gives, it takes as well. And right now, we'll see what Swierdowicz could do and whether he can keep that gap at a lower margin. Meanwhile, this is intriguing because we've just had a bit of an off-track month for Evan Clavio, and that's released to you on through. But I believe Raven to you right now has got none other than Major Monsivai side by side with him. And here they go then, tee up the inside in towards turn number 1. And we're on the one through. To you makes that place. And this is where Raymond 2 in the 96 right now will be wanting to pick up even more places, because keep in mind, of course, that for Raymond 2, he is the only one of what is your Gamma drivers, excluding Dan McFarlane, who we believe has taken tyres in the first pit stop. Dan McFarlane's pit stop was quite extensive. We believe he may have taken tyres as well, but that's the game plan for Raymond Tue right now. He needs to make up these places. He needs to close the gap to John Lauzon and Mike D'Almeida to give himself a chance of potentially taking at least second back in this race in the Gammas, and therefore finish inside the top 10. He is there at the moment. That's the top 10 overall, but he'd like to be a bit higher up and get even more points in this race. See what he can deliver a little bit later on. As this race right now, it's not slowing down by any means. Speaking of not slowing down, the battle for third overall and in the Alpha class between Agustin Fernandez and Logan McKenzie, that is not going away, but it's very interesting, these two. We've been keeping an eye on them off camera as they come on past the pit lane, on the start-finish line. They keep swapping the place back and forward. I think both of them right now, they're both cognizant of the fact that they're fighting for position, but I think what they're also concerned about is the fact that they are having to deal with a fast approach in Dan McFarlane. Now remember, McFarlane was third on the starting grid, as that's a drift sideways there for none other than what was Fuad Al-Rahi, who was behind them and is now a lap down. But as we do see Dan McFarlane make his way onwards, right now the Gamma leader really putting a flag in the ground here and saying to all the Alpha drivers, I'm coming for you just as much as I'm coming for the maiden Gamma title. So right now McFarlane is definitely one of those drivers, everybody who is ahead of him are going to be looking back and thinking, okay, he's actually a threat in this race and we don't want to lose out. Because if he was to put himself between McKenzie and Fernandez, that would change the entire dynamic of that battle between the two Alpha drivers. But for McFarlane, there'd be a big grin on his face because he'd put even more time between himself and the likes of John Lauzon and Mike D'Almeida. And speaking of Lauzon and D'Almeida, they're here together right now. and they're running at 6th and 7th respectively, fighting over 2nd on the road in Gamma, but we believe this might effectively be a three-way fight for 2nd with Raymond to you, or it could actually be the fight for 3rd based on the strategy, with these two yet to take their tyre change in the pits. But that's all going to be revealed in the next pit stop. We'll see the field oscillate back and forth. Alternatively, we may not, to be fair. We'll have to wait and find out as they find themselves behind what is the Audi driver going a lap down there of none other than, I believe in that instance, Jalen Kuo, and right now onwards they go towards the next tour of the circuit. A bit further down the order, we come to a good little battle going on here for 19th place in Delta. This is Dunbar, Hudako and Lobner. Corey Lobner here in the orange and black Honda. He's taking a little bit of a cheeky look up the inside there of the all-red Hudako machine. The number 76 driver there, Zach, right now, he finds himself right in the thick, and then they've suddenly got the Audi RS3 of Austin Dunbar in front of them. And Dunbar right now, well, he's not got the speed of the corner, but here he goes. It's lift off on the straight, or takeoff I should really say, and right now gets the throttle buried in the 333 and just tries to pull away. And we look back from the rear of the Audi of Austin Dunbar, and you can see how much of a gap it is growing with. It's got no slipstream to work with here. This is the Audi's raw torque on display, and until it gets to 6th gear, it will outpull those Hondas quite comfortably, and that's the trick of the Audi. And for long stretches or circuits which do have long straights, the Audi is near unstoppable, and you can imagine at Watkins Glen it's going to be a monster there, albeit we caveat that with the fact that Watkins Glen is also a momentum circuit. So if the Audi drivers can't keep the momentum, the Hondas will have just as good a chance as any other car, and that's without talking about the Hyundais. But as they head on to their next trip of the circuit right now, Dunbar does seem to be safe for a brief period of time. Their next target is Kyle Murray, who's up in 34th place or 17th for the Deltas, but Murray is pulling away little by little. As you can see him there in the S-Yacht machine, the S-Yacht G machine, and right now for Kyle Murray, he is looking to be very comfortable in the white and pink machine. Lovely livery on that car, and well, I bet there's a bit of a story behind it as he makes his way onwards. But as he does, of course, all these cars, they're going to be photographed in their absolute splendour by none other than the official photographer for the Alpha Touring Challenge. That's the glass and steel photography and design crew of Jason Lynn, who's on the grid here, and we'll tell you a little bit more about him later on today. But the official photographer, he provided the photos for the thumbnail of this broadcast, and you'll see plenty more of those photos over the season, as right now we see plenty more of what is some absolutely bum-clenchingly tight moments for the S's, and that was 3rd, 4th and 5th on the lead lap, all coming through, and they had to make their way past there. A very cognizant and aware Marcel Thomas, who did a brilliant job in the 228 of making sure to give them all the space to operate through there. Well done to all the drivers involved. But the one thing that is definitely standing out right now is that Dan McFarlane is breathing down the neck of that overall podium spot. He's got to find his way past McKinsey and Fernandez if he wants it, but he is looking incredibly quick right now as McFarlane in that Elantra. And I get the feeling right now that after this race, some people are going to be asking, should he be in Alpha? But I think the Gamma driver here will be saying, no, this has just worked out a treat today. And he's absolutely locked in and got it right. Just in front of them, we've got a two-way fight here between Lewis Gilbert and Roger Shank, as they're about to have a lap put on them by a couple more cars. They fight over 23rd in the Delta class, but we've got more pit stops coming up now. Will they defect into the pits? No, they won't. Nobody does in the camera shot. So right now, your lead lap runners, and also you're now to the almost a lap down further runners, they're all going to do at least one more tour of the circuit. And Shank has a very poor run out of turn 10, and that puts the best part of half a second between himself and Gilbert, as Jonathan Bradford comes out the pit lane and finds himself right amongst these guys in the Honda Racing Corporation Type R. But as he heads over the rides, this is very uncomfortable for the pit lane X-Tin driver, because he has to back off there for where's the blue flag coming in towards turns 2, 3 and 4. And now he finds that he's dropped in behind some drivers who've yet to pit, but he'll be hoping they pit within the next couple of laps. But he also needs to get a move on versus Marcel Thomas, because Thomas has yet to pit, and he doesn't want Thomas to essentially get ahead of him before the second stop. That will cost time. Here comes Shank on Gilbert then, looking up the inside of him is still Gilbert, but Shank's going to try and go all the way around the outside in the very lovely liveried machine. Onto the brakes, the pair both go. It's the battle of two Audis here, and meanwhile behind, I think Fernandez right now is going to be saying, can you politely both stop and get out the way, because you're causing me to have to slow down here. But as they make their way onwards, here comes Agustin Fernandez as he's been pushed along by Logan McKinsey. The wonderful thing about free wide down this back straight, particularly when it's two cars that are lapped down, is they create a bit of a traffic jam, and Fernandez right now puts himself in the fast lane of the highway as he makes his way down towards the braking zone here. And meanwhile McKinsey and McFarlane Farlane trying to find a way through, but Dan Farlane, he puts himself in the middle of the 2 lap down cars, and in the end, is he going to find a way through? This is very risky for the Gamma leader. Is it worth it? Yes, he would argue, as he makes over the rise. He does clear one of them, but not the other, and he immediately goes to the pit lane. McFarlane realises this is costing way too much time, and he's putting his race win at risk. Mike D'Almeida follows him in. Meanwhile, Raymond, to you. Does he go into the pit lane? Yes, he does. He ducks very quickly into one of the most difficult to enter pit lanes of the season. That's why I had a higher pit lane difficulty entry and exit criteria. But as Hugh makes his way into the pit, now we'll see how they all line up come the second pit stop. Major Monsivai makes his way on around. He decides to go at least one more lap. So therefore, he's going to take track position as the leader of the Gammas, at least for a brief moment, with Connor Achatella now moving up to second, and Zachary Leopold up into third of the class, albeit it will all change again shortly within the next couple of laps, because all these drivers have yet to make that second stop. McFarlane leaving the pit lane already. That's a quick stop. 11.5 second stationary. That confirms our suspicions, which is he took the tyre change right at the start of the race with the first pit stop, and he comes out right behind Mika Hendricks. Now, where's Tiu going to be? He jumps ahead of Mike D'Almeida, who's there behind him. But look at this between Almeida and I believe that's Shepka side by side. Shepka with a quick stop. Almeida fighting. Up the hill they go, and in the end, Shepka goes around the outside. He just keeps it on the road. If he had been even a millimetre wider there, he would have been beyond the pit exit painted line. That would have been essentially a drive-through penalty, and also he would have been on the grass, and that grass is incredibly slippery over there, even though it hasn't rained for some time, despite being winter in the US state of Georgia. I can tell you right now, Shepka just pulled off one of arguably the most trickiest overtakes you'll ever do, a pit lane exit overtake around the outside, and Mike D'Almeida, to be fair, he gave him the bare minimum amount of room to do it, and Shepka said, fine, I'll do it my way. John Lauzon has caught onto the back of this as well, so that's how it's all shuffled, and we are now waiting for your top 3 of the Gamma class to all come in. Monsivai is in, as I look at my content window. Achatella surely will be coming in within the next lap or so, and the same for Zachary Leopold, and then we will wonder who is going to be behind Dan McFarlane in the battle for second place, as we do still have Achatella and Leopold going onwards. They're going to go at least another lap. We're staying transfixed here to the fight for what we believe is effective third or fourth place in the Gamma class between Shepka and Lauzon as they come down onto the anchors. And right now, Lauzon staying so close here. And well, these two, they know each other so well. They have raced each other the best part of 3.5 years, if not longer. So right now, it literally is the case. They're enemies on the circuit, but great friends off the circuit. That's what touring car racing is all about. If you've ever been a big fan of the Super Touring era of BTCC, the British Touring Car Championship, you'll know exactly that in the 90s. Albeit we don't want a Jason Plato and Matt Neal situation between these two, because I can't imagine which one would be Neil and which one would be Plato. I would say Lauzon will probably be Neil, and I think it would be Shepka who's Plato, but I'm sure if they're listening right now, they would be able to agree or disagree on that one. But one thing that's important is Raymond Tiu is still ahead of them. Meanwhile, Mike D'Almeida comes out behind, so does Cooper Akers, and that explains the switch between them. We're still waiting for Leopold and Achatella, so that almost confirms our suspicions that Shepka and Lauzon are fighting for either third or second in the Gamma class at the moment, with D'Almeida only 1.5 seconds behind as they head in towards turn 6 and 7 here. 15 minutes left on the clock now, plus a final lap. Your top 4 overall, your 4 alphas, they've all made the way into the pit lane. Here they are. Swierdijk being serviced at the moment. Don't worry, it says he's exiting the pit lane, but he is still stationary. The car's being worked on, and here goes Polasek then, leaving the pits. Nice and easy there for Polasek. Gets it done. Swierdijk, meanwhile, he's still being serviced. It's a long pit stop for Swierdijk. Is this the sign of perhaps a risk coming in here? He's still being serviced. Has something gone wrong as Agustin Fernandez comes on through, and I think Swierdijk missed his pit box. I think he had to reverse, and Fernandez and McKinsey get ahead of Swierdijk. Now Swierdijk has had a 24-second stationary stop. The only other explanation would be is that Swierdijk has decided to change all tyres and essentially try to consolidate what will be second place with a tyre wear problem. He's got out ahead of Dan McFarlane just. But now we're going to have to see Swierdijk here try to find a way through. This is not going to be easy because Fernandez and McKinsey will absolutely fight to the very end of the race for that second and third place spot. But Swierdijk right now, if he's got the pace, if that is a fresh set of boots on the car, he's going to give it everything to the very end here to try and make some magic happen. Meanwhile, in the Delta class, how could we forget about this? Tyler Long has got back out ahead of Evan Clavio following the second pit stop. Clavio is not too far behind. There he is 6 seconds back. So in the end, despite Clavio having the better first pit stop, Long was able to save the fuel in the second stint, being in that long line of cars in order to be able to make sure he's come out comfortably ahead of Clavio. So it didn't quite work out for Clavio as much as he wanted it to, and he's got Chris McDonald right behind. My goodness, we've got battles for the podium spots in all 3 classes all the way to the very end now. And well, I'll tell you one thing, ladies and gents, we can only stay looking at one at a time. We'll try to make sure we cover all of them, but also try and make sure we don't keep jump cutting around here. Otherwise, you'll think that this is a sequel to other Taken movies. But as they make the way out to turn number 7, well, right now, Chris McDonald here, he'll be looking to try and make sure he can take Clavio's pace on that second step of the Delta podium, and with Jared Kalnins right behind them as well. Right now, the N livery machine, well, I can imagine the Elantra driver here is going to take confidence here in the fact he might be able to steal away a podium position, if not the runner-up spot in Delta today. What an incredible race this has been. The fact that we've now got podium battles running all the way to the finish, and it's at least 2 if not 3 contenders all the way through the podium positions, well, it's definitely a sign that season 16 of the AlphaTauri Challenge is off to a hugely successful start. But coming back to Clavio versus McDonald, we look back for the rear then of the leader of this battle for Sim Racing Grid. The pressure is building. The Honda driver McDonald right now looking one way, then the other. And well, he can't quite find it this time. It's turn number 1, but he's definitely eyeing it up. He's thinking about it. And well, I can imagine the next time there's an opportunity, he probably will go all in for it straight away as they come down the hill for turns 2, 3, and 4. But Clavio gets a huge bit of snap oversteer there, and he catches the car just in time, but that's going to open up the door, and the floodgates open. McDonald is through, and Kalnins is also through, and suddenly now for Clavio, it's all those places gained, all that time gained, and as quick as that, it's gone in an instant. He's back to 4th place in Delta, and now McDonald just needs to break away from Kalnins, who of course has caught up as a result of that. Behind them, Zachary Bowman and John Daniels, they fight over the final 10th place spot in what is the Gamma class, with Daniels there staying close, but Bowman did find his way ahead only moments ago. And in fact, we can get a replay of that move because it was quite an interesting one. And here we go, back in time, ladies and gentlemen, for the move being made by none other than Zachary Bowman on John Daniels. So this was heading towards turn number 1. A classic look up the inside here, but Daniels tried to extend it all the way around. Oh, there was contact between the two of them, and that's how the move was made in the end. I wonder if Bowman might give that place back towards the end of the lap out of respect, but definitely there a bit of a moment whereby he had all the enthusiasm, he had all the ability, but unfortunately the execution, it wasn't quite 10 out of 10. And meanwhile, we did of course have this big moment only moments ago for Evan Clavio, and what exactly happened to him from the exterior cameras, here's the perspective. And as he made his way into the corner, hit the apex curve at turn number 3 just a little bit too low, and that actually upset the balance of the car. You could see the front left drifted deeper into the tarmac, and with the corner being off camber, it meant that the car just understeered away from it. It would do so anyway, but the amount of understeer was unprecedented for Clavio, and thankfully he was able to keep it off the grass. Otherwise he could have been taking a very big expedition there. And well, with that, return to your live racing. But as we come on back, there's not long left to make other moves or make amends for our drivers. 10 minutes there as they all continue to push on. And right now we look back to the battle at 4-way second place overall. And here it is, it's 3 wide as they head over the crest. And it's going to be Swierdijk on the inside, Fernandez in the middle, and McKinsey defends it from outside to inside. Swierdijk contact there with Fernandez, but here they go onto another lap. My good lord, how they survived that, I don't know. And Swierdijk is back up the inside immediately, and Fernandez here tucks in behind him. If you're Dan McFarlane right now watching this from behind, I can imagine he would be hoping he could put a bucket of popcorn between his legs as he drives. He would love to be just watching the entertainment, but he's got to unfortunately keep his hands on the wheel. And as they make the way down, we jump on board with the Gamma leader, who is watching this closer than anybody else right now. He's got the front row seat here, and I'm jealous of him as he roars his way through turn number 5. And the Sim Racing Grid driver right now, oh, the temptation must be there, and it must be going over his mind. I can imagine he's got a devil on one shoulder saying to him, get involved in it, see if you can take an overall podium. And then the Angel on the other side and all the team from Sim Racing Grid are going to be saying to him, Dan, don't throw the Gamma win away. You have got an 8.5 second lead over the next car, Franz Washing, and then it's a further 7 seconds to Raymond Tew. You don't need to get involved in this. But right now, I think McFarlane, if he is able to stop himself from getting involved, that's testament to his ability to control himself as a driver, because everyone wants to gain more places, and I think McFarlane is no exception. But here they come down the hill once again in towards the chicane, and McKinsey right now, well, if he can hold on to this second place versus Swierdijk, he might just be able to put the demons at Road Atlanta to bed, which we talked about much earlier on in today's broadcast, but we'll have to wait and see. And keep in mind as well, over the course of this season, we have multiple awards which will be given out to our drivers come the season end, including what will be the Sublime Finesse Award for the cleanest driver with the best quarter to instant ratio. That went to Chris McDonald last season. We'll also have the Leader Award for the most laps led, which Michael Polasek is definitely setting the standard again, and had a staggering 185 laps last season, 4 times more than anybody else. belt. We've also got the Ironman award for the most laps turned. That was Michael Polasek by a single lap. And also the consistency award out there, the highest average finishing position overall. Again, that was Polasek last season with an average of 2.33. So practically always finishing second, if not higher. And we've also got the bonus feature award for the most bonus points collected. That was Polasek and Logan McKenzie last season. And we've also got the Naked Aggression award, which we talked about earlier on, which is the most overtakes. That was Tyler Long and Spencer Clark last season. And the Speed Demon award, the most fastest laps over the races of the season. Michael Polasek is the defending holder of that. So that's a quick update on the Season 15 award list and what drivers will be going for if they can't take championship crowns this season. And well, as our battle for second through to fifth overall makes its way back to us, that was a good interlude there, but we now come back right to the thick of the fighting as they roar the way down the hill. And Polasek being 16.5 seconds away at this point, he's probably wondering what's happened behind him. And well, if he does watch this broadcast back afterwards, you understand, as that's a big slide from McKenzie. He gets it stopped before it goes around on him. But right now, McKenzie absolutely on the limit here. I wonder how much he's got left to this car for Pennzoil Super Touring, and I suspect that perhaps the tyres are starting to give way, because something tells me they may have only literally changed one tyre on the car, but Swearidoch has to go defensive here versus Fernandez, and Swearidoch has got the freshest tyres of all of these drivers, having changed at least 2 on that front axle. But as they make the way up the hill right now, McKenzie holding on for Pennzoil Super Touring, and I think his game plan here is just going to be to try and force the drivers behind to fight each other. And it's a valid strategy, so long as you're not changing your position into the braking zones, which is known as weaving and blocking. So long as he declares his defensive line, he can drive as slowly as he wants, so long as he's not driving unnecessarily slow. And that's the game plan right now. He can't break away here. You can see the damage of the front bumper of Swearidoch's car, given how hard he's worked to try and make these places back up, and the fact it's been bump and grind between these cars. A bit of contact between touring cars is permitted. They are sturdy machines, not quite bumper cars, but they come close. And as they make their way out of turn number 7 right now, McKenzie at 9, he's got to keep that Honda behind for what will be 6.5 more minutes, or in other words, as our leader makes his way down towards turn number 10. That's going to equate into a grand total of at least another 5 laps. It's a long way to go. These laps come thick and fast, but I can tell you one thing, at this point of the race right now, time will be slowing down for Logan McKenzie. It will feel as though this is the longest period in his life until the next race, until the next big battle. But as he makes his way through the chicane, it's going to be the number 4 trying to hold on for a little bit longer. Further back, we do have Jared Kalnin still on the back of Chris McDonald, trying to take that second place off of him in the Delta class, with Evan Clavio having a bit of a distant look at it right now. And even further back, we've got Jess Rakowski trying to fight with Carl Murray. These two have swapped places on strategy several times, as Rakowski goes a bit deep there, brings it back on, but that's not a good way to do turn number 3. And Rakowski, unfortunately, losing the best part of 7 attempts there to Murray, and that gap's only going to be added to now as they build up the momentum through the S's. But back to the drives, head into the S's here, and it's a look up the inside from Swearidoch into the S's. It's a fake out there from Swearidoch. There's no way he was going to go too wide through there, but he tried to make McKenzie think he was coming for it. It got McKenzie offline. Now here they go up towards turn number 6, and McKenzie immediately glues himself there. He staples himself to the inside of turn 6. Swearidoch trying to look round the outside. There's contact between them. Swearidoch hits the rear of what is McKenzie's car, and Swearidoch is into the grass as he rejoins. It's a big hit. Is that going to cause him time to come to the pits for repair work? We'll have to wait and see as McKenzie carries on. And well, in the end, they were running so close, and I just wonder whether both drivers misanticipated the positions of the others. But meanwhile, Agustin Fernandez now looks at this and thinks, right, it's game on. If McKenzie's wounded, I've got to pounce at this point. It's going to be the Vulture attacking, not quite the carcass yet, but you can imagine that's what he wants. He wants to pick up this second place. Here they go on the brakes. It's the battle of the velocities into the chicane. 2 wide they enter, 2 wide they're going to exit, but Fernandez on the inside now. He's got to surely have the run over the hill. Dan McFarlane's going to be watching this meanwhile, eagerly waiting to see what's to come next. They go 2 wide into the sweeping bend. 4.5 minutes still left on the clock. It's not over yet. Fernandez gets ahead. But here comes McKenzie backing him down, looking around the outside. Can McKenzie make the counter-attack here before the S's? Not quite. He has to switch back to the inside now. He's going to head up the hill here, wondering whether he can outbrake him into turn number 3. It's not easy, it's completely blind, and in the end, he backs off there, and Fernandez takes the spot. But I think this could be temporary as Dan McFarlane continues to watch this, but Wojciech Swearidoch stays out. He's 1.3 seconds behind. He's closing back on them very quickly in Swearidoch. They continue to fight. He may yet be back in the podium fight here all the way to the very end. Francois Schink, meanwhile, is 5 seconds behind, and he's closing at a rate of half a second a lap. But if the fighting intensifies, he may be closed up much quicker than that. So you imagine that right now, Francois Schick, he's going to be looking at his relative, and the team are going to be telling him over the radio, keep up this pace, you may yet have a chance at what be a top 5 finish in this one. You're not too far away. The 5th place Alpha driver right now throwing everything at it as much as he possibly can as the Curb Your Enthusiasm Autosports team. Well, they'll be struggling to curb their enthusiasm at this rate as he makes his way down that back straight. But from them, back to the Fernandez-McKenzie McFarlane battle. And as they make the way towards this braking zone this time, will there be any drama? McKenzie goes to the inside, but this is more as a message to McFarlane. Don't try it. McFarlane immediately responds to the Gamma leader and says, okay, I won't. But next time around, there might be a fault because we've got another couple of laps to go. Your leader of Polisek, he's already into the S's on lap number 39. At this rate, he'll do this one plus another 2. Such is the pace he's brought to the table. Such is the space he's also been given on circuit. And this leads to questions. Does it potentially risk the fault of drivers having to do one more lap than they anticipated? Did everybody plan for a 41 lap race? If not, because it is very close on the boundary of 40 to 41, with a 40 lap race requiring Polisek to only be on average 0.3 of a second slower lap, to essentially require him to be fighting with other drivers to get caught up in traffic. That has not happened here. Will we see anybody duck to the pit lane at the last possible run on lap number 40 or even on lap number 39 as they suddenly realise they haven't got enough fuel to get to the end? Well, you wouldn't perhaps think it for the leaders, but you definitely think it for perhaps some of our Delta drivers further down who've been so engrossed in fighting that they might start to see the fuel tank gauge saying that they're running low. And then they'll see the amount of time that's left. As here's the best of rest fight in Delta between Jonathan Bradford, that's Joseph Heath, Nick Bader and Jason Breen as they all come down. The DHL machine here of Joseph Heath is trying to deliver a great move. And in the end, is it going to be First Class Express? Not quite, but it's a good attempt at it. And as he makes his way around right now, well, he's going to have to try and make a bit of a door dash around the outside here of turn number 12. But it's not going to quite work out as they go 2 by 2 here. James Carl watching a little bit further behind. He creeps on through in this order. Nick Bader's the one to watch out. A mammoth run coming out of turn number 12. And does he think about it into the opening corner versus Heath? No, not quite. But Carl's queuing up behind, as is Breen, as is Lynn. They're all very much getting very close together. But nobody right now wants to dare to make the move at this time. And I think they're all want to bring it on home. And nobody wants to make a move before somebody else does, because otherwise the whole pack will be split. But somebody's got to make a move, surely. Otherwise, it's going to be Jonathan Bradford who brings home this highly coveted position of 11th place in the Delta class. He takes way too much apex curve there at turn number 5. Causes the car to slide loose. That causes Heath to back off. Here comes Nick Bader. He switches the outside line immediately here to look for the momentum and go around the outside. But can he do it in the Elantra? The answer is no, but he can go for the switchback here into turn number 7. Is it worth it? No. He decides instead to tuck into the slipstream and give himself another go, making the way onto the back stretch. So Bader right now, all the speed in hand. We jump aboard with him as he powers his way up towards what will be the chicane. But will the 133 here go for it? He's thinking about it. Here he comes, but they'll put him on the outside here under braking. Off camera, Swierdijk has found his way past McFarlane for 4th place. We'll keep you updated with that shortly. But Bader here going all in for the move now, knows it's his chance. Under braking, however, the Honda's going to be the stronger car, and in the end it will be Heath who holds the position, and it buys Jonathan Bradford a bit of breathing room. But as they come over the hill now, here comes Bader again on the inside here. It's a good move. This is exactly what he wanted. The switchback has worked out, and it's now going to be onto lap 40 they go, but he loses the momentum there, and Jason Breen goes around the outside of him, and now it's going to be Lynn catching up, as meanwhile your leader Michael Polisek has gone onto the 41st and final lap of racing here today at Road Atlanta. My goodness, this is an incredible endurance race round, and right now Polisek is 22 seconds clear of Augustin Fernandez, who right now has got Logan McKenzie and Wojciech Swierdijk behind him, but they're all at least half a second apart from the next car, and I wonder whether they've all decided that's how the race is going to end unless anybody makes a mistake. It's not over until it's over, but right now you can definitely feel that the tempo and what is the aggression between these drivers, I think after that big scare between McKenzie and Swierdijk, I think it has calmed down. But speaking of calming down, there's a lot of dust out. I think that's from Corey Lobner, who's had a bit of a moment. Yes, he has. There is Lobner recovering the car. In fact, I think he's got damage. That's going to be a tow to the pits, which is very unfortunate for Lobner. Right at the end of the race, he has just towed past me from what I can see out my content booth window. So it's gone wrong for him as we look to Mark Darnell, meanwhile, make his way down the back stretch. But meanwhile, just in front of him, here is your defending champion. And what's the best way to start off a title defence, ladies and gentlemen? You're right, that is by winning the opening round of the season. And as he makes his way through the last couple of corners for Michael Polisek, this is the perfect beginning to season 16. Here's your winner overall and in Alpha by 22 seconds in the end over the field. And when the rest of the field does arrive on the scene, it is going to be one of the following 4 drivers It's going to be Fernandez, McKinsey, Swierdijk on the far lane, but in the end, it can only be one. And I think Agustin Fernandez has just done enough in an incredible battle between himself, McKinsey, and Swierdijk. But Fernandez comes home in second place ahead of McKinsey, and Wojciech Swierdijk will just miss out on the podium with Dan McFarlane taking the first ever Gamma Class win. The Prime win there in fifth place. Well done to him ahead of Francois Schick. John Lauzon does enough in the end to bring on home second. Pulled up a second. Raymond Hughes behind him. I think it's Raymond Hughes been demoted on down there on a glitch for the time tower, but John Lauzon has been classified as your second place finisher in the Gamma Class ahead of Raymond Hughes, with Matt Shepka just missing out on the podium right, and it'll be Mike Almeida who rounds off your top 10 there. In Delta, it's a brilliant win for Tyler Long, who absolutely delivers on the stage for the strategy and also heroics throughout the Delta field today. Chris McDonald in the end got the upper hand for second place in Delta, 16th overall, and Evan Clavio in the end managed to make his way to the podium. Even if it wasn't quite the win he was chasing on strategy, a third place finish in the Delta class means we're going to be watching his career this season eagerly, no doubt about it, as he finished only 7 tenths ahead of Carl Flannery. Jared Calnice in the end, round off your top 20 overall, and with that, ladies and gentlemen, as all the drivers cool and calm things on down, well, I can tell you one thing, it has been an incredible season opener, and I would not want to be inside that race suit right now of Agustin Fernandez. I can imagine the sweat and the adrenaline levels inside that cockpit must be absolutely over the limit. But as he cools himself on down, a great second place there. And for Logan McKinsey, well, what a battle for the Pennzoil Super Touring driver. But in the end, that contact with Swierdijk just ruptured what could have been his chance of the runner-up spot. But he'll be happy with what he was able to. And Michael Polasek, meanwhile, parking up there and getting the job done. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, as things cool on down, let's take a look at those race results subject to any stewards' inquiries. And here they are. So an incredible 60-minute race here for round number 1 of Season 16 of the Alpha Touring Challenge, partnered with both Syncmesh and Glass and Steel Photography and Design. And we got to see, over the distance, Michael Polasek take victory for the opening race of the season, both overall and in Alpha, for Yellow Flag Motorsport by 22.5 seconds. Behind him, completing that podium, was Agustin Fernandez, the privateer from Argentina, who did a brilliant job in fighting as hard as he could throughout, and he deserved that second ahead of Logan McKinsey, who some would say deserved that second place as well, but the Pennzoil Super Touring driver in the end couldn't quite hold on to it after that late contact with Wojciech Swierdijk in the end caused a bit of damage and just unsettled his rhythm. The breakfast for dinner driver of Swierdijk in the end, he puffed, he threw everything at it, but unfortunately it wasn't quite enough to finish on the podium. But keep your eyes out for him as the season goes on. He's definitely not losing any pace as the Polish driver. He was ahead of Sim Racing Grid's Dan McFarlane, your first ever Gamma winner in the series history, and well done to Dan for an incredible drive. He really was untouchable today. He timed it to perfection. Then it was Kirby Enthusiasm Autosport's Francois Schick, who finished in 6th place, ahead of John Lauzon, teammates in the past, but not on the same team today. Well, they'll be happy to see each other together inside that top 10, with John Lauzon, your runner-up in the Gamma class for Beaver and Dees, ahead of teammate Raymond Tiu, who at one point was chasing that second place spot, but in the end had to give it away to his teammate on strategy. That was your Gamma podium finishers, ahead of Matt Shepka and Mike De Almeida, with the Kirby Enthusiasm Autosport and Yellow Flag Motorsports drivers completing the overall top 10. It was best the rest for Connor Achitella in 11th place, behind his teammate of De Almeida, but ahead of Pennzoil Super Touring's Cooper Akers. Your top 15 was then rounded out by Zachary Leibold, firstly, the Formula Llama driver, ahead of your Delta class winner of Tyler Long, and the T0 Racing Ascent driver in the end, ascending to the top step on strategy and making sure not to let the difficulties of the opening and second stint hold him back. Make sure Monsivai in the end round off your top 15, the privateer ahead of Chris McDonald, who was your second place Delta finisher. A solid race of the Gator Racing driver, no doubt about it. And then we had Zachary Bowman for Pennzoil Super Touring just ahead of Evan Clavio, and Clavio there completing your Delta podium finishers for Sim Racing Grid. Your top 20 was completed by Carl Flannery for Gasparilla Motorsport and Jared Calnice, the privateer. And keep your eyes out for both of them, because they both had great starring moments over the course of this race, but couldn't quite convert it into a Delta podium. Continuing the theme of overall finishing positions, we won't quite go through all of them, but we made it all the way to 23rd place on the lead lap, with John Daniels, Mika Hendricks and Gareth McAllister completing that run, and the Croc Motions Alpha driver in particular seeming to struggle today, and I'll be hoping for a better day in the office next time out. It was a lap down for 24th place finisher Ronald Meffert all the way through, and to what was outside the top 40, but the top 40 being completed there by Roger Shank, the privateer, and it was a lap down all the way to none other than the best part there of what was 41st place in the hands of Lewis Gilbert. The crop promotion straight in the end ahead of Damon Mitchell, who was also a lap down, my apologies, ahead of his teammate, and then it was 2 laps down for Corey Lobner. 5 laps down there apiece for Namiak and also Andy Cossack, and 8 laps down for Jalen Kuo. We also had finishes as classified for the proverbial retirees of Marcel Thomas, also there to Jeremy Barber, and also to Fouad Al-Rali, and unfortunately it was a non-finish as classified, no points awarded from 50th downwards for Marco Mangano and also Aaron Law, Kurt Smith, Adrian Fedorowski, and Angel Bonilla Soto. But coming on to the individual class finishing positions, because this is where it matters most when it comes to the big scores and points. In the Alpha class, we only had 6 drivers on the grid, and Michael Polasek in the end was the very top of them for Yellow Flag Motorsport, ahead of Agustin Fernandez and Logan McKenzie, with the Pensol Super Touring drive completing the Alpha podium. Breakfast for dinners, Wojciech Swiatek was 4th, ahead of Francois Schenk, with the Kirby Enthusiasm Autosport driver knowing there's more work to be done, but he was ahead of Mika Hendricks for Crop Promotions. In the Delta class, meanwhile, we'll come to that shortly because we must come to our Gamma class firstly. And then the second of our classes are Pro-Ams. The new class saw Dan McFarlane take that maiden win of the season for Sim Racing Grid ahead of the Beaver and Deeds pair of John Lauzon and Raymond Tiu. Then for the American, it was his fellow countryman and Matt Shepka who was 4th for Curb Your Enthusiasm Autosport, ahead there of Mike De Almeida, who round off your top 5. He was just ahead of his teammate for Yellow Flag Motorsport of Connor Achitella, with Cooper Akers ahead of Zachary Lobold, and then Major Monsavai and Zachary Bowman completing your top 10. It was best the rest in length for John Daniels ahead of James Carr, who was a lap down, as was Damon Mitchell, who brought up the rear of the Gamma class. Then lastly, coming to what was your Delta class, our biggest class, and indeed one of our most entertaining classes so far today, and we definitely saw Tyler Long in the end make sure to steer clear of the danger and bring home a brilliant Delta win for T0 Race of Descent, ahead of Chris McDonald for Gator Racing, who had to settle for second. Albeit he won't be complaining about that, because he was able to outfox and out-strategize Evan Clavio, with the Sim Racing Grid driver settling for third, just ahead of Gasparilla Motorsports' Kyle Flannery, who was close at the finish and needed a couple more laps. The same can be said for Jared Calnice, albeit he would have preferred there to be a few less laps to hold on to that third place, but it wasn't to be, unfortunately, for the number 20 driver, but he was 8 seconds ahead of Gareth McAllister, who fell short of the top 5. The Monster Energy Racing driver was then classified a lap ahead of the Gasparilla Motorsport pair of Ronald Meffort and Sean Gerd, with Mark Darnell and Carl Tross completing your top 10. Outside the top 10, best of the rest was Jonathan Bradford in his brilliant battle with Joseph Heath, Jason Breed, Nick Bader and Jason Lynn, with Zach Hudarko creeping onto the back of that right at the end, but ahead of the Scotsman of Carl Murray, with the Seat G driver finishing ahead of Jess Wachowski, and Austin Dunbar and Mitchell Richmond Tyre completed your Delta top 20. Beyond the top 20 for them, well, we saw it was then Spencer Clark ahead of Roger Shank, with Lewis Gilbert ahead of Corey Lobner and Namiika in the end having to retire from the race right towards the end due to an issue with the car, but the T0 Racing Summit driver ahead of Andy Cossack, and we saw Gillian Kuo finish the last on the road. The Midpack Mafia driver then ahead of Marcel Thomas and Jerry Barber, and unfortunately it was retirements for Farad O'Reilly, also for Marco Mangano, Aaron Law, Kurt Smith, Adrian Fedorowski and Angel Bonilla Soto. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our rundown of the provisional results, and it concludes all of our racing action from our opening round. That can only mean one thing: it is time for us to wrap up. Thank you very much for watching, and if you have enjoyed today's show, and perhaps you want to know more about the AlphaTauri Challenge, perhaps you've seen this now and want to get on the grid for the remainder of Season 16 or beyond, well, for all that and more, we definitely recommend you go to the official website, and that's at alphatorichallenge.com, where you can find out all the details and the full history of the series, dating all the way back to its very first races in Season 1, the best part of almost 5 years ago. We'd also like to take a moment to say a big thank you to our series partners, who do include, firstly, Syncmesh. Their website is sync-mesh.com. Born out of the pursuit of one-man's search for better gear for sim racing, Syncmesh is the company which provides purpose-built gear for sim racing, ranging from gloves through to a full line of performance wear. With an obsessive attention to detail in their gear, which aligns with your attention to detail in nailing lap after lap on the simulator, you could not ask for better gear to make your racing experience better. So if you'd like to know more, head to sync-mesh.com today. We'd also like to say a big thank you to Glass and Steel Photography and Design. The ATC's official photographer, Jason Lynn, is a highly talented and approachable individual who provides both photography and livery design services for the iRacing simulator platform as part of Glass and Steel Photography and Design. But do not just take our word for it. With 5-star reviews from his clientele, cited him as easy to work with, detail-orientated, and a very fast responder, if you are looking for pixel-precise photography or a livery design to dominate the competition, then why not head to his website at glassandsteel1.wordpress.com today. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, attention turns now to our second round of the season. And whilst the racing will occur on Monday, the 12th of January 2026, we make our way to Charlotte Motor Speedway for its infamous Roval. Come join us as if it were live on Tuesday, the 13th of January 2026, where we continue the story of the championship. And in the Alpha class, what we have definitely seen is that Michael Polasek has carried on from where he's left off in the previous season by absolutely leading the way here at Road Atlanta. Whereas in the newly introduced Gamma class, it was Dan McFarlane who led proceedings, but can he make it 2 for 2? And in Delta, it was Tyler Long who in the end was able to stay ahead of the clamouring pack, but it may not just be as easy at Charlotte Motor Speedway. So come tune in for all that and more next time out. But until then, we have been the Alpha Touring Challenge. I've been your host and commentator, Paul Walsh, and until next time, to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, like our drivers, remember to stay on track. Good night.